Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium eSports coverage of the 12th round of Season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, the Big Green Egg Indy 250, iRacing's virtual Talladega Superspeedway in Talladega, Alabama. James Pike, the voice of Podium eSports, here for tonight's broadcast, alongside my colleagues Taylor Burris and Justin Prince, with our producer Ryan Bauer punching all the buttons in the virtual production trailer. And fellas, we are going to send some folks home. It is a playoff elimination race, and maybe the biggest story coming into tonight is that Taylor, last year's champion Nick DeGroot, enters this race on the outside looking in.
He certainly is, but we are in a car that he is most favorable in competing and finishing strong with the Indy cars. However, one of the things, though, is this is Talladega Superspeedway, the most unpredictable track that we have on the Monday Night Racing calendar. Of course, remember our season opener at Talladega with the Cup cars, we saw Kyle Busch put on a fabulous effort to win the season opener. Can he maybe pull something off again? Well, we're going to have to find out and see who can survive here at Talladega.
I think survival is the apt word to describe this race, Justin Prince, just because this is a Monday Night Racing staple of sorts. You think of the Pro 2s at Watkins Glen, the Indy cars at Talladega go right up there as one of those wackier combos in iRacing that tends to find its way onto a Monday Night Racing calendar year in, year out. So it's a wild race, and there's a lot that can happen, a lot of volatility. It's not necessarily so much a skill-based race as it is a strategy-based race, which is why tonight's race should be very wide open.
Absolutely. This is a race where you need to be smart when it comes to making passes and trying to navigate through traffic, because we're talking about massive speeds around this racetrack, 240 plus miles an hour potentially around Talladega Superspeedway. You also have to be able to be careful to be able to manage said lines as talked about, because any wrong sudden movement, any little bobble can cause the massive one, not just the big one, the massive one. With the type of incidents we can see tonight with these cars, with its crazy speeds, we could see 3, 4, 5 wide racing throughout the night as well. It's going to be a difficult race to try and come up on top in, and it's also going to be one that's going to be highly entertaining to watch.
All valid points there, Justin Prince, as we now take a moment to show you where in the world we are, courtesy of our friends at Google. And the answer to that question, how about 30 minutes east of Birmingham, Alabama, is where Talladega sits officially. If you're going for a post note and a postal address, it is Lincoln, but Talladega, largely where it's been known, an old Indian burial ground. Derives the name for this, the biggest and baddest and fastest track in all of NASCAR. 2.66 miles, 4.281 kilometers. It is a gigantic palace of speed that has played host to some entertaining races throughout the years, and we expect tonight to be no exception. It's time now to step aside and let the band take over as we present tonight's national anthem. When the national anthem performed, we'll take a quick moment to let you know the three drivers that are on the outside looking in tonight. It's Nick DeGroot, Ron Capps, and Nick Sanchez, who are on the outside of the cutoff. 13 drivers enter, 10 drivers will leave with a shot at the Season 2 title in Monday Night Racing. DeGroot and Capps are only 1 and 3 points back at the cutoff, respectively. Sanchez, 24 points back. He will need a victory of some form just about in order to ensure his playoff place. For tonight's Command to Fire engines, we throw it to one of the most famous names in food television. It's Guy Fieri, who will give us the command to fire engines.
I hope everybody is safe and well, but I gotta tell you, I'm ready for some racing. So here we go. Drivers, start your engines!
Many thanks to Guy for the command to fire engines. We turn our attention to the Bryant Shock Technology Pole Award, which tonight goes to Denver, Colorado's Stephen Wilson at 39.487 for the number 25 to stick him on the top of the board, and he will start P1 when we get the green flag in about a lap and change. We'll take a look at the rest of the starting grid now, which sees James Davison join his IndyCar compatriot on the outside. Garrett Smithley, fastest of the NASCAR Cup Series drivers. Anthony Alfredo, Gabe Wood, Drew Welker completing those first three rows, but big names across the board there, Taylor.
Certainly is. In fact, there we see Nick DeGroot starting in the 9th position here today. Ryan Vargas competed in Daytona here in the Xfinity Series over the weekend, and of course now heads to another big track with a lot more horsepower. He will be starting in 11th.
Many playoff drivers starting in the middle of the field. Kyle Busch, keep an eye on him in row 8 alongside Gary Sexton, two of our playoff drivers. As well, one of the top drivers in practice tonight, Seth Ager, among the top 9 rows.
Ron Capps and Nick Sanchez, the other two drivers besides Nick DeGroot, who are fighting for their playoff lives, headline this next set of drivers. But Max Kidd and Chad Reed, Garrett Miller, Kobe Moore also in the mix back there too.
A little further back, we will see Michael Massey's and Dylan Welch on row 13, followed by Matt Stallneck and Will Rogers, row 14. DJ Cummings, another one of the playoff contenders, he's going to be outside looking in inside the top 30.
Riding out the grid tonight, it's Breck Baldeck along with Ford Martin. Ford Martin starting shotgun. It's going to be a long way through the field for him tonight in this important race.
A long way through the field, but not an impossible task. The draft with these Indy cars does work to some degree, like the draft with the stock cars at Talladega. Thought to take a look at the track facts before we go green flag racing in this big green egg Indy 250 at Talladega Superspeedway in Talladega, Alabama. The 2.66 mile, 4.281 kilometer tri-oval that opened just over 50 years ago in 1969. There are 33 degrees of banking in turns 1 through 4, 16.5 degrees of banking in the tri-oval, and 3 degrees of banking on the straights here. Tonight, we go for 94 laps, 250 miles, 402 kilometers, and the instant time, as per usual, the default day for iRacing, May 15th, 2021, just after 4 p.m. local time. Weather? A balmy 74 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, but 97 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. So the sun starting to work its magic on the surface here at Talladega. Winds headed to the north at 2 miles an hour, humidity of 56%. Not necessarily the traditional muggy summer Alabama afternoon that we've become accustomed to over the years, especially when you think of all those years that this was a July race that they ran for the Cup Series Taylor Burris. But it's still going to be interesting to see how these drivers handle the relatively slick conditions.
They certainly are going to have a little bit of trouble. But one of the things, though, with these Indy cars is that they can make a lot of in-car adjustments, making adjustments to those noses with the wings, adjusting the wicker to help try and stabilize their car while in the draft. And the thing is, with that wicker, they can actually go up and down any part of the track. They could actually be doing it multiple times, going up a couple of clicks or down a couple of clicks in the middle of the corner in order to help their car stabilize in the draft, especially when their tires get a little more worn out.
Tire wear, not necessarily something you think of, Justin Prince, but something that these drivers, I think, will have to be mindful of, especially in the later half of some of these green flag runs.
Especially with the ability to be able to maneuver. Taylor mentioned some of the adjustments you can make in the car. It's also going to be important to make sure you manage those said tires as well, though. It's going to be very important to be able to keep in mind the various different runs going on throughout the field especially with the amount of speed being carried tonight.
In excess of 240 miles an hour, you will see at points in this race as Stephen Wilson gets on the gas pedal, and we are underway with the 12th round of Season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring. The big green egg Indy 250 from Talladega is green, and Wilson and Davison immediately jump out ahead of everybody else to the front, but we begin to see the momentum on the top side, Taylor Burst. That's where Davison goes. Smithly waiting to find his hole to follow through. Anthony Alfredo in the mix as well.
They certainly are, as your top four are all held by some of the biggest names in motorsports. You ride on board with Anthony Alfredo. 3 wide for the race lead as they come out of turn number 4. Very dicey here on the opening laps as they come down the front straightaway here. A couple of cars going to line up to the inside while we see Alfredo all by himself pretty much on that outside lane as they come across the line.
That sounds about right. 3 wide on lap 1 when we go IndyCar racing at Talladega. Just about what you would expect from Monday Night Racing, no, JP?
Absolutely, especially with these types of cars in the runs. And it's going to be very vital to be able to control the runs, because you lose the draft here, it's extremely difficult to claw your way back with these types of cars throughout the field. So you're going to need to be patient, but also be able to stick with the draft and potentially slingshot other cars to keep with the draft as Alfredo forces one car up the track.
Was about to say Anthony Alfredo with the move there. It almost got dicey for Gabe Wood in the 50. That's the car that the number 38 decided to shuffle out of the way. And here comes Alfredo, who Taylor Burris, I think, is taken to these things in Monday Night Racing. Certainly not a huge IndyCar or open wheel background for the front row motorsports driver who made his first start in the Daytona 500 a day ago. But in Monday Night Racing, he's not been afraid to put his IndyCar towards the front when we go IndyCar racing.
He certainly has not, and of course I think with all the momentum that he's had when it comes to super speedway racing here over the past couple of weeks on both the real world and on the iRacing surface, he's been seeming quite confident as right now we'll see as he goes once again up to the top of the racetrack for the 3-wide battle for that race lead.
Already Anthony Alfredo with no fear to go top and try and get some help, but there's not really organized draft behind him. And when you come to Talladega, this track is so wide and you're moving so quickly. It's not necessarily like Indianapolis in that sense, Justin Prince, where the speeds are similar, maybe not quite exactly where we are at Talladega, but there's a lot more chaos in the drafts. It's not necessarily an orderly line or two like you see at the racing capital of the world.
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as checking up normally for these types of cars in the amount of speeds we're carrying, because you check up here, you might get rear-ended. And keep in mind, this is with the new damage model on iRacing 2, where any little bit of damage can cause a significant amount of suffering for the rest of the run, where you may have to come in and get repairs done in your race car. So you're going to have to be careful with where you take these runs. And for the most part, I wouldn't be surprised if people immediately take said runs, because it's either try and check up and hope you don't get hit, or you take a 3 wide for the race lead.
Just like Ryan Vargas is trying to do all the way up on that top line to the outside of James Davison. He's there. To his inside, Stephen Wilson still holding the bottom as we ride on board with the driver out of La Mirada, California, sitting up there in that 3rd lane. Now going to get taken 3 wide. Anthony Alfredo goes to the middle to try and shoot the gap and gain another spot.
Stephen Wilson is providing a phenomenal run right now, holding that inside lane here and just pretty much running the shortest way around the racetrack. He may not have that momentum, but he does have a little bit of help from Brandon Brown, pushing him to help build the momentum. But here comes another fan favorite when it comes to racing at Talladega on Monday Night Racing. Kyle Busch has broken into the top 5.
Surprise, surprise, Justin Prince. Look who's already made his way up from 15th on the grid. It's the man who won the last time we were here at Talladega with the NASCAR Cup Series cars. Kyle Busch trying to go through the middle just like he did back in November to win the season opening race. He may well try and do it again here to get the lead early on in this one.
Coming off that strong run in the Daytona 500 just yesterday night, and someone that can manage the draft very well. We've seen him be able to manage the runs confidently and carefully and being able to choose his marks. Compare that to some of the others just want to try and take those runs as soon as they can and then hope they can stick it 3 wide on the high side. The problem is the outside line hasn't necessarily worked in some cases so far.
Jason Keffer now the man up top. It seems like it's that outside lane where we're seeing names shuffle and drivers flow from the front to the back and vice versa. But Keffer, driver in the NASCAR Heat Pro League for Junior Motorsports, trying to get that number 30 machine to the outside of Kyle Busch and potentially to the race lead. But I think the most notable thing here in these opening laps, we've seen people go to the outside and shuffle up there and be up front for a time, Taylor Burris. But Stephen Wilson's just been able to sit on the bottom and hang on to the race lead.
The reason why as well is because the inside lane is probably the most organized. There's always a car behind Stephen Wilson. Unlike right at that top lane, except right now here recently, it seems like that outside lane starts to fall off a little bit. You may get a good run because of that momentum that you have to take that run. But for the most part, if you don't have someone sticking right behind you and you still keep it with the momentum, you're not really going to stay up towards the top field on that top side. You're going to fall back like we just saw Keffer.
Potentially, as Keffer did fall back, but they're more organized up top. He's got help, though. That's Gabe Wood in the 50 machine, who decides to go with Keffer and try and create the third line once again as they make contact. Gabe Wood gets sent to the fence. Jason Keffer into the wall, and I think one more car, and that might be Preston Pardis. Can't tell who ended up with the damage there, but we stay green flag racing. Did they bounce off of Nick Sanchez, perhaps, as the caution flag does come out for the first time? We'll take a look at the replay, but I do believe it was Sanchez. Remember, one of the drivers trying to race his way into the cutoff. Starts tonight outside of the cutoff, but trouble early on, and it starts with the 96, Justin Prince.
Yes, and we just talked about drivers wanting to take runs, and for him, he had a massive run of 250 miles an hour and decided to try and take it 4 wide. The problem is he hit the right rear tire of the car in front, then squeezed the car to his outside. That caused that pile up along the outside wall into turn 3. Robbie Lyons, you see him on the driver spinning around on the bottom of the racetrack, as major contact. But again, it's either you try and check up and hope you don't get hit, or you try and take the momentum and go for a run. In that case, the run ends up going in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
First incident, although it is worth noting, is some cars end up in trouble a little bit further back. I think Ron Capps might have a broken wheel and a broken left front suspension already on his number 28 NAPA Auto Parts Indy car. But the good news for a lot of these drivers, even if we end up in trouble early, Taylor Burris, 3 fast repairs tonight as opposed to the usual 1. The admins know that this race can be a little bit wilder than most, so there's a little bit more forgiveness when it comes to damage, especially since these Indy cars don't quite take a beating like some of their stock car brethren.
They certainly do not. One small move could cause you to lose that front nose wing, as well as maybe if you get a contact in the back, make you lose either one of your side pods or that rear wing, which is critical when it comes to the aerodynamics that you need in order to stay very competitive here at Talladega with these Indy cars. One false step, one ding, you are completely out of contention until you come down pit road and get it fixed.
We are indeed going to see a lot of drivers, I think, come down pit road for service just to get these cars fixed up. And potentially some madness, but Stephen Wilson's ability to control the bottom, Justin Prince, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about that. He wins the race off of pit road as well, but for as much shuffling as we saw on top, Wilson sat on the bottom, stayed on the bottom, didn't get passed for anything that entire first opening green flag run.
I think it's similar to what we see in stock car racing when it comes to super speedway racing, where the shortest distance around here on iRacing is the one that controls the momentum for much of the run, because it's quicker in the corners on iRacing, but it's not as quick down the straightaways, hence why we see the side-by-side with the middle line in particular. For Wilson, though, especially with it being organized as Taylor talked about, that helped him a lot to just be able to control the bubble and essentially control the momentum of the front pack up at the head of the grouping.
We'll take a quick commercial break as these cars circulate around Talladega under the yellow flag. You're watching Podium eSports coverage of the Big Green Egg Indy 250, race number 12 of Season 2 for Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple delight, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at biggreenegg.com. That's biggreenegg.com.
Tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, is also brought to you by Big Green Egg. With Big Green Egg, versatility is the name of the game. You can grill, roast, smoke, bake, and sear on the all-in-one, simple-to-use Big Green Egg. From appetizers and entrees to desserts and delectables, the Big Green Egg will exceed all your expectations. And with 7 convenient sizes and a lifetime limited warranty, there's a Big Green Egg to fit any lifestyle. Don't forget to watch the number 9 Big Green Egg Ford Mustang of Michael Guest for Jim Beaver Esports and the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series all throughout the 2021 season, and listen to their Cooks and Cars podcast on their social media channels on Saturday mornings. Race on over to biggreenegg.com for more information and find your nearest dealer today. Back to action momentarily in this Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega. Stephen Wilson, your leader. Lap 13 going to be when we get the restart. And big question, I think, for the rest of this field is who can make the outside work. Can you get organized up there enough, Taylor Burris, to potentially make a run?
I think what's going to have to happen is that there's going to be some drivers who are going to have to back off a little bit to try and get that run. We see that happen in both IndyCar and stock car racing. Drivers letting off a little bit, try to build a little bit of a gap between the car in front of them to where that car behind them can give them enough energy to push them through. And if that car behind him is able to keep up and stay with him, then there is a possibility that the cars on the outside lane can pass Stephen Wilson and even maybe James Davison for a chance to lead around Talladega tonight.
Maybe, just maybe. Also of note, in addition to the 3 fast repairs, drivers are eligible for up to 3 waiver rounds depending on how much damage they pick up. So certainly something we'll keep in mind as well. Normally it's 2 laps that you get back on waiver rounds under the yellow flag, but as it stands, the only man applicable, Jason Kempfer in the 30, so he'll be back on the lead lap as we ride on board with our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter, DJ Cummings, who we'll talk to a little bit later this evening. We'll keep our eyes peeled to see what Cummings does. Remember the number 10 car, one of the 4 in the championship 4 season ago that ran these very Indy cars at Indianapolis. But it's Stephen Wilson and James Davison, the IndyCar veterans, who will lead us back to green flag racing in this Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega Superspeedway. Waiting for Wilson to get the command. He goes, he fires, we're back underway. And a good restart for Wilson. Not quite so great for Davison. Vargas, though, tucking up nicely behind the number 25 car. And Alfredo, too, beginning to make that outside work. Now ducks to the inside and then back to the outside again to get a big run through 1 and 2.
And Alfredo's been very aggressive when it comes to these moves, has been thinking about trying to take it 3 wide several times. It's obvious he wants to try and lead one of these lines. It's just been the matter, though, of trying to find the right people to help him get there on the 3rd line. Drivers like Kyle Busch are among those drivers, like Preston Pardis, as Busch decides to back off big time here.
He got out of that quickly. I think he doesn't like what he sees ahead of him because they are pretty tightly bunched together. Anthony Alfredo helping to make that happen. Here comes Brandon Brown from Richmond Raceway in NASCAR, beginning to make it 6 up top. And Busch gets that big run again, but he's got about 4 or 5 drivers behind him, so now he can't check up near as much as he'd like to.
He certainly cannot. Otherwise, if he checks up too much, he's going to get rear-ended by the car behind him, which is going to be car 26 of Jesse Vaughn, who's right there with him. Now here comes the 89 of Nick DeGroot. He is trying to see if he can get his way up to the field. Of course, if he wins, he's guaranteed a spot into the next round.
Trying to race their way in. We'll keep an eye on the point situation throughout the course of the evening as we figure out which 3 drivers' playoff aspirations will end when the checkered flag falls tonight. Meanwhile, front of the field is now pretty well organized. They're starting to bunch back up just as they did before we got the yellow flag a few laps ago. But Stephen Wilson doing a nice job parading that outside line to the inside. It's rather inside of Stephen Wilson. Outside was James Davison, but here comes Kyle Busch with help from a few friends up top.
And you can tell he's getting a little bit impatient with some of these runs. Built up a ton of speed that time to get up to near 250 miles an hour. But the problem is, again, once you get side by side to the corner, it's just the longer way around. And with the side forces with the wall, it can pull you back a little bit on iRacing. And that's the case there, I think, for Kyle Busch, where he needs more cars and more momentum. Anthony Alfredo might be that momentum for him.
Alfredo now up to the top side to try and pull push, and 3x3, and then call it 2 and then 3 again. It's about the first 9 that are nose to tail, and then good battling further back as well. You look at maybe a Will Rogers or a Devin Henry or a Nick DeGroot even, part of the second pack of cars that are running just behind the race leaders as you look off the back wing and the rear wing of Gary Sexton out of Hanover, Pennsylvania. He currently rides a little bit further back in this field in P6, but just sort of hanging out waiting for his moment to shine as Wilson and company continue to lead, and it's still 3 wide with Alfredo up top and Davison in the middle.
Garrett, these drivers here, James and Justin, are showcasing extreme talent. I mean, yes, this is a sim, but the momentum, the thought process, the focus that you have to have at going at 250 miles an hour in a sim where you're not even maybe a foot across from each other to the car beside you, in front of you, or behind you, is just trying to maintain that mental focus to stay on and make sure you give it 110% lap after lap. Remember, we're going 250 miles an hour, and of course a 250-mile race. So the driver's mental focus here tonight has to be as if they're actually competing in a real event.
I think the mental focus has to be up, if for no other reason, because for as fine as we think the margins are with stock cars, you add another 40 miles an hour on top of that, Justin Prince, and the reaction time window that you have to make a move or avoid a wreck is even smaller than it is with the stock cars. With the stock cars, it's already pretty difficult to begin with.
Hence why I mentioned the importance of being able to time up the runs, because you're going to have maybe half a second at the most to react to some of these incidents, depending on where you are in the field tonight. You're also going to have near perfect reflexes to be able to dodge some of these incidents because of how quick and how fast some of these cars are going to bounce around, as Nick Sanchez, who's been charging his way through the field, just got hit into the side pod of Kyle Busch.
Nick Sanchez has to make something happen, though. That's the thing, Taylor Burris. He's got to find a way to the front, and he pretty much just about has to win this race. So no surprise that he goes up top to try and make it 3 wide in the very front of this field. He really doesn't have anything to lose.
He certainly does not, as we have a big incident there through 3 and 4. Anthony Alfredo and several others. Ryan Vargas, Gary Sexton involved in this big one off of turn 4.
Big incident to bring out the second yellow flag of the evening on lap 19. Much bigger than the first incident a few laps ago. We'll look at the replay momentarily and see what happened, Justin Prince, but somewhere between Anthony Alfredo, Brandon Brown, and Gary Sexton is where they started.
Yes, indeed, and you can see just side by side running nice and normally for much of the straightaway, but by the time they get to turn 3, there is that potential of getting your contact or getting cars loose with the left rear. You're going to see right there, snaps it around, and there's that half-second reaction time. Nowhere for a majority of the field to go.
A good use of the new damage model that iRacing is beginning to deploy on its cars. It's active and available on the Indy car with this build that came out in December. So a little bit more realistic damage than we've seen in some of the prior Monday Night Racing events on these cars today. Is a lot of damage for about 5 or 6 folks here. And Brandon Brown struggling to get his car back to pit road as Stephen Wilson and company will come down for service, you would figure, this time by.
Waiting to see what they decide to do right now as they're coming down towards the pit entrance. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say everybody's going to come down to get fuel and tires, even though tires are not very important when it comes to super speed racing for stock cars. You got to remember that these tires are going much faster than an average stock car. These are going 250 miles an hour with these Indy cars, so it may be a little bit of a wear for these drivers, so they have to make sure that the tires are good. And to be quite honest, it's going to be critically important that fresh tires always usually comes out on top when it comes to IndyCar racing.
They do. They're a little bit less important here than you would normally think, Justin Prince, but still, I think, useful and still, I think, a difference maker to some degree. I think somewhere between the Legends cars that we see on the plate tracks and the stock cars, that's about where these IndyCar tires fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the main things to keep in mind is the difference between no tires and tires is about 3 seconds tonight in the pit box. 5 seconds for anyone who goes for a splash and go. 8 seconds to 9 seconds for anyone who usually takes tires in these cars. So it's something drivers will think about doing if they want to gain track position towards wanting to start towards the back potentially in some of these runs. Should be worth noting that some of the drivers did stay out there, like Wilson, like Davis, and like Sanchez, though, wanting to keep the track position early on, as well as Dylan Welch and Ron Capps is up to 7th today now.
That's a big run for Ron Capps if you can hang on to it. Remember, also on the outside looking in. But at this point, time to turn to our Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter, DJ Cummings, out of Westfield, New Jersey. Usually, pre-pandemic would be spending his days working in NASCAR's headquarters in uptown Charlotte, North Carolina. But in an IndyCar tonight with the Harris Lou NASCAR paint scheme on his car. And DJ, opening 21 laps, have you learned anything, especially in comparison to last season when this car track combo was used, that you think might help get you to victory lane a little bit later on this evening?
The draft definitely is a lot more prevalent since they did the recent Dallara update compared to when we did this last year. Like, you could be a second and a half behind either one car or just the pack itself, and you'll catch right back up to them, whether if you're in 5th or 6th gear. I mean, we were even on the initial starts, we were topping out. We were basically redlining in 6th gear, going 255 down the back. I was like, well, all right, we're going extra fast here. So it's really going to be coming down to just managing the draft and timing your runs correctly, and just making sure that we're there at the end. First run there, that first 10 laps, I rode in the back just to play it out a little bit, see how everybody was doing, and then once we got that second run, I was like, oh, I'm gonna give it a try a little bit there, and then obviously had to burn a fast repair. Didn't get so lucky, but it's all right. It happens. We tried it. Not gonna know unless you try. So we'll start in the back here, ride around for a little while, and then once we get to about lap 60, 65, I think it might be time to head back up to the front.
We've seen that third lane kick in at points, and people have been able to get to the front, but they haven't been able to get past Stephen Wilson on the inside. What do you think it'll take for maybe the middle or the outside to get a run big enough in order to potentially pass somebody who's got that bottom locked down the way Stephen has since the green flag dropped?
I think it's going to be, you're going to need to have a couple of friends come with you on the in the middle. I think the middle is probably going to be the best lane to be. I mean, you can get a lot of speed in that third lane, but just with the way that the aerodynamics are set up, I think it's the middle lane might be the best place to go to get past Stephen, Davis, and those guys. I mean, we're in their wheelhouse. These guys are pros for a reason. So we'll see how we do here. But I'm thinking definitely if they're going to be hugging the bottom lane the whole time, it's going to come down to the middle lane, I think, and get a lot of people together in order to get by them.
We'll keep our eyes peeled on you and see what the NASCAR IndyCar can do. There's a combination to break a few brains, but we'll chat with you a little bit later, DJ. In the meantime, thanks for the time with us and best of luck.
10-4, thanks, guys.
That's DJ Cummings in the number 10 machine, who was in the championship 4 season ago, trying to advance back into all the madness. He came into tonight 5th in points, about 10 points clear of the cutoff line. And as we get closer to the end of the night, we'll keep you all abreast of what is happening in the point standings right now. Gary Sexton and Ford Martin on the outside looking in, with Nick Sanchez in 13th. That will shuffle a lot over the course of this evening. So if your favorite driver is close or maybe on the edge, I wouldn't necessarily worry just yet. Not until we see a few more fast repairs get burned. But it is Stephen Wilson who is set to bring us back to the green flag on lap 23 of 94. And the 25 machine gets back on the gas with James Davison to his outside. And we're green flag racing once again in this big green Indy 250.
Cars getting up to speed right now. A little bit more cautious start for this restart here, as a couple of cars are going to separate themselves from the rest of the pack, but they got to make sure of that. Right now it's the top 5 who separated themselves. Ron Capps leading the second pack in that number 28 NAPA Indy car with Nick DeGroot behind him. So those two battling to clinch their way into the next round.
How about this? They finally decided to try and ditch James Davison because Nick DeGroot has stacked them up a little bit further back. So it's the wildest we've seen these front 3, 4, 5 since the drop of the green flag. And I think the first earnest chance that anybody's had to try and pass the 25 car, but still 3 wide at the front with Nick Sanchez trying to race his way through the top spot, and he has to just about win this race. He came into tonight 24 points outside of the playoff cut. Justin Prince, he doesn't really have any choice but to try and take the checkered flag over the steering wheel back home.
It's been made clear that his way of approaching this race is try and be at the front and avoid potential carnage from the back of the field. So he's pushing as hard as he can. He's also someone I know, based on experience from what we've seen in various races throughout the past couple months especially, he likes to enjoy these types of races and have fun. And you can tell he's trying to have fun by taking as many big runs as he can. If he can't get the run on the outside, he'll back it up and try and get it again. If he tries to go in the middle line, he'll try and get somebody to get up to the high line to help him. Someone that's trying various different things throughout the night. Now it's about 2 by 2, make it 3 wide for third.
3 wide once again for third. Nick Sanchez continuing to try and work that top lane. The ARCA Menard Series driver with a nose, maybe a wheel, maybe a wing ahead on corner entry, but not enough to maintain it as they come through the corner. A little bit further back, Nick DeGroot, who is also outside of the playoff cutoff there, and Ron Capps too. So all 3 of the drivers who are on pins and needles tonight, trying to make their way into the next round of the Monday Night Racing playoffs. And of note too, Taylorverse, remember, Nick DeGroot is the defending champion, won this in season 1, and is trying to go back-to-back to start off the first 2 seasons of Monday Night Racing. But a bad run tonight for him ends that dream altogether.
It certainly does. So it's pretty much a win, and he's in for the next round. He can maybe try to get a podium finish here tonight if one of those drivers who's on the cutoff line to get of the top 10 is going to be behind him. But a podium or a win would be the best chance for Nick DeGroot to come on to the next round.
Nick DeGroot trying to find his way up to the top side and maybe join Nick Sanchez, who is currently to the outside of Kyle Busch. James Davison still in the middle, controlling this with Stephen Wilson to his inside. Meanwhile, just a little bit further back, looks like the 65 machine of Will Rogers for Space Station Gaming. I might need to get an IndyCar painted up for the Space Station, folks. We saw it in an Xfinity Series car last week, but the SSG driver up to the front for the first time, working the inside of Kyle Busch's Rowdy Energy car.
Yeah, somebody that likes to have a lot of fun as well across the sim, tries to race in various different types of cars, known for his road course racing ability more so than his IndyCar ability. But right now, running a nice and patient line, running that bottom line, just trying to stay tucked up behind Davison and Wilson, and just trying to follow along with the momentum. But notice one thing, that pack is closing in. It was just talked about by DJ Cummings that the pack is picking up more draft with recent updates compared to in the past, and that's seeing the pack now start to compress and gain more cars. Look at that move.
Big move there to get Kyle Busch out front for the first time. So he'll drop to the inside, and it will be the 51 in control of the bottom lane. The first time all night that Stephen Wilson hasn't been the Pied Piper on the yellow line. And Kyle Busch may well just about lead the lap, although Nick Sanchez went to the top and just managed to sneak ahead for a split second. It was Davison who led by 2 1/1000ths of a second at the stripe, but now he bounces off of James Davison, does Nick Sanchez, and into the fence goes the 96, who's going to be down 2 fast repairs before we hit lap 30.
Big trouble right there for Nick Sanchez as he is struggling trying to get back to pit road. But how about the elevator drop that Kyle Busch just put on the field to take away that race lead? Was right up on the outside of the racetrack and then just dove it down to the bottom after he was able to get it clear. And now he is in control. He is doing what Stephen Wilson has been doing for the previous 27 laps now, holding on to that race lead as he works his way through turn 1.
So Kyle Busch in control, outside line, a little bit less organized than we've seen up to this point. But how about Nick DeGroot, who got a big run out of turn 2? He'll join the charge, head right to the top. And Matt Stolnick, who teammate to DJ Cummings, we just talked to, is our BSC and race reporter a few laps ago. He's also in the mix there for the first time tonight. Will Rogers trying to trail off of the back of the 41 car.
Oh, and the caution flag is out as an incident, I believe, on the back straightaway. Gabe Wood involved with an incident.
Gabe Wood in trouble indeed. We'll take a look at the instant replay to see what happened, but looked like a checkup between Wood and Greg Stump in the 78 car. Those two come together at the back of this pack, and yeah, they just stacked up in front of Gabe Wood, and Stump didn't have enough time to react. It underscores just how hard it is, Taylor Burrish, to get on the brakes with these things in time.
Well, if you think about it, you're trying to go from 250 miles an hour down to maybe about 50 or 60 or maybe even 170 at least, just to make sure you don't run into the back bumper. And it's quite impossible really to do that close to your competitors, as we just saw happen.
So Gabe Wood goes into the fence with the busted rear wing. It'll be one fast repair for him. Nick Sanchez, though, down 2 of 3, I think, is arguably the bigger story. That happened right before we got this yellow flag, and I wonder if some of the checking up that eventually got Gabe Wood into trouble, Justin Prince, was the reason why we ended up with the yellow to begin with. I have a hunch that the chain reaction that started with Sanchez hitting the wall in the exit of 2 ended with what we saw between Wood and Stump down the back.
I think potentially, as they're wrecking under the caution flag right now at the back end of the field, guys, something just happened in our checkup effect when they were trying to catch up to the pace car.
Brett Baldeck, Brandon Brown, I saw involved here. Looks like there was contact with Ryan Vargas in the 6 machine, so he ends up in trouble, and that'll be 2 fast repairs, I think, as well, as Vargas just couldn't get on the binders in time. Although I actually think the Brown's car may well be okay for the most part. Just the slightest bit of damage, perhaps, but seems relatively okay. Does the 12 machine. We'll see if he has to go through fast repair number 2 early on. But Vargas just taking the EOL for not getting on the brakes in time, and we'll wait and see if everybody else comes down pit road and who has to burn through a fast repair in addition to who gets tires. I think the fast repair part might be the more important piece of the 2 at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, some of these drivers have to be running low on fast repairs, and we're not even at halfway yet. And that's going to be concerned for how some of these drivers will approach some of these runs and how aggressive they'll be for the second half of this race. Hence why I think so many drivers have been patient in trying to run at the back of the field. And keep in mind, the damage has been significant. Keep in mind, for example, Dylan Welch. We've seen him stay out under the last caution flag. He was up towards the front. His side pod was damaged. He had to come down within a lap because he lost 20 positions in the span of 1 straightaway. And guess what? He's now 26th, right now at the back of the field. It's that significant, any type of damage on these race cars tonight.
Damage aplenty, damage early. Will damage be terminal for some of these drivers later on when they burn through fast repairs? We'll have to wait and see how this Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega pans out. We'll be back after this quick commercial break. You're watching coverage of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring here on Podium eSports.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way.
Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
Tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Tufco Flooring, an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. Tufco doesn't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach, and neither should you. They listen to your needs and requirements and develop custom solutions for every client. For more information, you can visit their website at www.tufcoflooring.com. Back to Talladega in this Big Green Egg Indy 250. Jason Keffer stays out under that last yellow, so he assumes the race lead on 13-lap old tires. Nick DeGroot leads the group of everybody else that came down pit road. It was not a great pit stop for Stephen Wilson, who's going to be as deep in the field as he's been all night up to this point.
No, he certainly has not, as he's trying to see if he can be able to manage his way in traffic. That's going to be one of the things. Your car may feel great out front, but when you're in traffic, the car's going to feel completely different than what it was originally. So he's going to have to start making some adjustments very quickly.
We'll turn our attention to the leaderboard and run you down through the field before we go green flag racing. It's Jason Keffer, Nick DeGroot, Kyle Busch, James Davison, and Stephen Wilson, your top 5. Then Will Rogers, Matt Stolnick, Devin Henry, Ron Capps, Robbie Lyons, your top 10. Taylor Burris.
Currently sitting in the 11th position is Steve Affont. Michael Massey sits 12th with Anthony Alfredo in 13th. Max Kennan sits 14th. Garrett Smithley in the 15th position, followed by Seth Eggert 16th. 17th is Covey Moore with DJ Cummings, our in-race reporter, in 18th. 19th is Dylan Welch, and 20th is Garrett Miller. Justin.
Rounding out the top 21 is Brett Baldeck. Nick Sanchez will also be back there around the 22nd position. Greg Stump in 23rd with Welker in 24th. Vargas and Brandon Brown are 25th and 26th with Chad Reed, I should rather say, in 27th. Ford Martin in 28th. Preston Part is 29th. And Gabe Wood rounds out your top 30, James.
Jesse Vaughn 31st and Gary Sexton scored 32nd. A glitch has rendered him unable to re-enter his car after the damage he suffered in that big wreck. So he will be one of the 3 drivers going home early in the playoffs tonight, and that will allow for one of the drivers on the outside looking in to race their way back in to the next round and potentially become one of the 10 fighting for the title when we get to Dover next week. But it's Keffer who gets back on the gas pedal, takes us back to green flag racing. We're about a third of the way through proceedings here in this big green egg Indy 250. Lap 34 goes up on the board. Keffer leads Kyle Busch off into turn 1 with Nick DeGroot and James Davison working the top side. Stephen Wilson there, and a big move from Will Rogers to take it 3 out of turn 2.
He doesn't gonna have enough momentum though to carry him. He's gonna have to have a car. He's in trouble right there for Keffer. Gets turned by Kyle Busch as he'll go below the yellow line and hit the inside wall.
So Kyle Busch turns Jason Keffer. I suspect that probably is going to earn some form of EOL penalty for Kyle Busch. The bigger question is whether or not he's got damage on the left front of his number 51 machine. It was questionable for a split second there, but long story short, he tried to go up to block James Davison and then tried to tuck in behind Keffer to get back in line. And when he tried to tuck in, he was just too close to the 30 machine and spins him around.
I think Davison actually got into Kyle Busch, possibly into the right rear tire, though. Keep an eye on this on the exit of turn 2 because Davison was very aggressive off the start, wanted to try and control that outside line like he did prior to a few restarts ago. But starts to build up momentum after the group decides to back out here when they're going 3 wide. Davison decides to make the cut. Right there when Kyle Busch goes to block, he gets into the rear tire, and that's what triggers Kyle Busch into the back end of Keffer's car.
It was very slight contact with the tires, Taylor Burris, but these Indy cars ride on such a razor's edge that even that kind of contact can be enough to send somebody around and into somebody else, and at least in tonight's case, burn through one of the faster cars.
To be quite honest, James, I'm surprised they didn't take out more cars in that incident because Kyle Busch could have easily lost control of that Indy car there with just that minute touch. I mean, it's very hard to control that car even at those speeds. Even though he wasn't at full speed just yet, it's still very difficult to maintain, and he could have easily washed back up the track and collected the rest of the field.
That could have been a lot worse. There's no doubt about that, but only a 2-car incident there, and it looks like Kyle Busch's car is okay for the most part. So it was slight contact, but only just enough to keep the 51 at bay. He does not have to use one of his faster pairs, though I suspect. It just seems like everybody at some point is going to be at risk of needing to burn through one. Such is the nature of racing here at Talladega. More importantly, Anthony Alfredo leads everybody from about 12th on back down pit road. There are a few takers that have decided to stay out, but a lot of folks that are coming in for service, whether or not it's to top off fuel or to maybe get a new set of tires or potentially try and fix some damage the old school way and just sit in your pit stall for a little bit so that you don't have to burn through a faster pair. A lot of different options for the back half of the field as they come down pit road.
Yeah, those repairs can take up to 12 seconds when you try and change your wing manually here on iRacing, but I'm concerned about Davidson and Busch, though, coming up here, James, because they both do have a bit of end plate damage on the left front in particular from that contact, more so, I think, on Busch compared to Davidson. You're going to see just a little bit of a tweak in the bend that might affect these cars off the launch, more so on Kyle Busch, as you can see right there with the end plate. And I'm curious to see how much speed is going to be affected there by that end plate damage when we go back green. Now, the reason I think they stayed out here in part with the track position too is wanting to bank the faster pairs, because we're coming up to 58 laps to go this time by. There's still a lot of laps to turn. You don't want to use even a first faster pair this early on with so much that can happen in this type of race tonight.
And I think especially for as little damage as Busch may have on the front end of his car, Taylor Burris, there are some cases where, you break one of the arms, you break the rear end housing, you'll need to burn a faster pair. But if it drives straight, as a certain DW would say on the Fox broadcast, it's driving good. And I think that's enough to keep people at bay and keep them away from pit road.
It certainly is. So it's just going to be a matter of listening to their spotters, trying to ask some other drivers to check their cars, which a lot of people have been doing, to make sure that their car is good enough to continue on. If they need to come down and fix it, or at least try to use that faster pair, unfortunately. But as you said, we are still early. We're just a little bit closing in on that a little over that halfway point here. So, I mean, it was sad to say some drivers have already used up all, if not just one left.
Potentially could be tricky for them in the second half of this race as we take a look at some of the events that you'll see in the world of Podium eSports and iRacing coming up over the next few weeks. Sunday night, the MPI Cup Series is back in action from Richmond Raceway. You'll see that broadcast this Sunday, 9:15 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium eSports before we're back in action with the first race of the round of 10 for the Monday Night Racing playoffs as we head to Dover International Speedway with the NASCAR Cup cars. That broadcast you'll find at 8 p.m. Eastern here on twitch.tv/Podium 2. The following day, it's the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. The best of the best in stock car sim racing head to Homestead, Miami for the second race of their campaign. You'll see pre-race coverage start at 8:45 p.m. Eastern before the main broadcast starts at 9 p.m. Eastern on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. And then next Wednesday, the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series heads to the dirt version of USA International Speedway in Lakeland, Florida. Pretty flat racetrack and flat short track down in the central part of the state. That broadcast next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern on Podium's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube before the MSRI Premier Series returns to action from Phoenix Raceway March 13th, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and that too on Podium's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. James Davison to the lead with Kyle Busch to his outside on lap 37 of 94. It'll be Davison, Busch, Rogers, DeGroot, and Devin Henry in the 86. The fifth car in line to the inside. Justin Prince.
And I'm curious how Devin Henry does on that inside line. Somebody that is part of the NASCAR community in terms of reporting, has also been someone who's risen up the sim racing broadcast ranks throughout 2020, James. We've gotten the chance to work with him in the past. I've worked with him a ton as well in his experience. Someone that is a very energetic broadcaster, as well as somebody that can wield the car very well. And so far tonight, he's done a very solid job staying out of trouble and gaining positions throughout the field.
Devin Henry, voice of the MPI Cup Series here on Podium eSports on Sunday nights, and probably a better shoe behind the wheel of these cars than either you or I, JP, or Taylor for that matter. He's got a little bit better balance than we do. But we'll see whether or not he can walk that tightrope to the front over the next few laps as James Davison gets set to bring us back under green flag racing. He got a great jump, Taylor Burris. How about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe car lengths that Davison jumps out ahead of Will Rogers, Taylor Burris. But watch for the big run from the 65 coming through the corners.
That is going to be the thing we're going to see off turn number 2, and that gap that was 7, 8, now down to 4, 3, 2, and now 1 car length. And now we will see Will Rogers duck out to the outside along with Kyle Busch, and they will slingshot around race leader James Davison. Rogers goes down to the bottom of the racetrack. Kyle Busch stuck up on side the top. He's got to try to find a room to get to the inside, but Stephen Wilson going to close that hole quickly.
Of note, if you thought that gap was suspicious, so did race control. The restart is under review, so there may be penalties coming, and the question is going to be whether or not race control thinks that Davison went early, or if Rogers laid back too much to create the gap that allowed him to surge to the inside around the outside of James Davison to get that first spot on that inside lane, the oh-so-coveted position. It might not matter much, though, because Kyle Busch has decided to work with James Davison, and Davison is going to drop down in front of the 65 and take control of the inside lane once again.
And this is going to be where that patience comes in. I think with some of these drivers, with some of the incidents, we're going to see hopefully one of our longer runs of the race, because some of these competitors know if they risk another incident, they're going to be in trouble for the second half of this race. So I expect drivers to try and go 2 by 2, a couple go 3 wide. Well, the person I'm looking to go 3 wide is Nick Sanchez. Other than that, expecting to get very calm here for the most part.
Sanchez is back up front again and not afraid to get up there and try and make that third lane work. I think maybe more importantly, look at that green car on the outside machine. It's Robbie Lyons to the 19 car with the throwback paint scheme to the early days of the Indy Racing League. He just about bounced into Nick Sanchez, but Lyons making his presence known, part of the team that brought you the Grit Ultimate Driver Challenge on Podium eSports a month ago. Now working the 19 through the middle to try and get to the front.
Good run right there to get around Nick Sanchez to his inside. Now he's got a good run as well off of turn number 2. He's going to try to duck to the outside of Will Rogers, but to no avail, as here comes DJ Cummings and also Devin Henry with a big run.
We'll wait and see how this pans out, but big news here. Nick Sanchez with a black flag for a restart violation. He changed lanes before the start-finish line, shed race control, so Sanchez will have to come down pit road and serve the penalty, and that will knock him back. He'll need some wave arounds, so certainly not good in the short term, but interestingly enough, if they wreck up front here, he can pick up a few wave arounds, and I think he'll be okay.
As long as he stays patient, absolutely. And especially with this type of racing, you know anything, and I mean anything, can happen at any moment. But again, the IndyCar veterans have been able to just control the momentum much of this race. This time it's Davidson now trying to control the bottom line. They've done a phenomenal job just controlling the bubble and just trying to maintain that yellow line. And it's considered by some, mind you, James, as the safest place to be, because it allows you an escape route and it essentially allows you to control your own destiny at the bottom of the racetrack.
Speaking of bottom of the racetrack, look who's lined up together. The two teammates from NASCAR's headquarters in Uptown Charlotte. It's Matt Stallneck and DJ Cummings, who are nose to tail, but they get split by the driver from Front Row Motorsports, Anthony Alfredo, with a daring move to get to the bottom and become the third car in line.
A big move right there by Anthony Alfredo, as he's going to try to get that momentum running for the inside lane as they come off the turn 4 down the front straightaway here. Davison look at another big move for Ryan Vargas to go all the way to the bottom of the racetrack.
Anthony Alfredo tucking up behind Will Rogers, trying to keep himself clear. That's Dylan Welch in the 14 machine, running the same paint scheme that Tony Stewart ran in the Indianapolis 500 back in 1999. The orange and white machine up to the top there, now tucked in behind Anthony Alfredo, who tries to go up top to try and get around the outside of Will Rogers.
Yeah, Moran, an NBC Sports reporter, doing a phenomenal job in this middle portion of the race. Had to come back from that side pod damage to get a fast repair and from a lap down to be able to claw his way back into contention here. And he's making it known. He wants to be aggressive. He's someone that's a racer in real life on the dirt as well. He's someone that can really wheel a race car, and Nick DeGroot might be someone that might be able to help him here if they elect to go to the outside.
Nick DeGroot also came into tonight outside of the top 10 in points. He needs a good finish in order to advance into the round of 10 in the Monday Night Racing playoffs, as Rogers will get the run on the outside with help from Alfredo and Welch, but the inside should be able to battle back in the middle of the turns.
So far, it is 2 by 2 by 2, about 8 rows deep, just about, as they come off the turn number 4 and now continue down the front straightaway here. The 12 car Brandon Brown's trying to take right to the back bumper of the 51 of Kyle Busch. He's going to take a peek to the outside as Alfredo is just stalking, trying to get a run going to get to the outside third lane.
Third lane maybe forming again. I see a few cars trying to peek out just a little bit further back here at the very end of this line. Brandon Brown trying to tuck in behind Devin Henry, the group there, but it's still 2 by 2. They've shut down the third lane, and I wonder if Nick Sanchez being out of the draft might maybe keep that third lane quiet for a little bit, because he's been the main driver that's been making that third lane go and developing it. Nobody else really wants to try it, and then as soon as I say that, there goes Anthony Alfredo and Dylan Welch to the outside of Will Rogers.
I was about to say, Anthony Alfredo is one of those drivers outside of Sanchez who's made it clear he wants to be able to go 3-wide and poke out and try and get a run towards the front. The problem is, it's not really worked when he's gone out there in particular. He and his spotter, Brian LaPrade, have definitely been busy throughout the night to try and navigate these lines. But it's pretty clear you need to have more help and a massive run to make that third line work to clear 2 lanes of traffic.
They just about bounced off each other. Did Stolnick and Kyle Busch. That almost got ugly. Meanwhile, Devin Henry tucked up behind that rear wing of the 51 machine. Alfredo drops down to the bottom. There goes Henry to the outside. First time he's decided to make it 3 all night long. And maybe a little bit of help coming to Ryan Vargas on the outside there. He nearly bounces off of Brandon Brown. And Dylan Welch willing to go to the high side as well to try and help get Henry to the front.
Starting to get a little momentum built in that outside lane, but they have to try to keep it going. If they don't, they're going to stall and lose position. But right now, Will Rogers has a nose over James Davison with the help of Kyle Busch and Anthony Alfredo as they come off of turn number 4 down the front straightaway here. Will Kyle Busch peek out or stay tucked up behind the 65 of Rogers?
As they continue to dart around Talladega Superspeedway, it's time to bring you tonight's Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Will Rogers scored the leader that last time by. That it was James Davison, Kyle Busch, Matt Stolnick, and Anthony Alfredo, the top 5. Then Devin Henry, DJ Cummings, Brandon Brown, Dylan Welch, Ryan Vargas, the top 10. Taylor Burris.
As we look through the field right now, currently holding on in the 11th position is Nick DeGroot, followed by Greg Stump in 12th. Stephen Wilson sits 13th, followed by Ron Capps 14th. Kobe Moore sits 15th, followed by Robbie Lyons in 16th. Preston Pardis sits 17th. Steve Affont sits 18th. Gabe Wood 19th. And Michael Massey rounds out your top 20.
Garrett Miller rounds out the top 21 at the moment, with Brett Baldeck shuffled back to 22nd over the past couple laps, while 23rd is Max Kennan. Garrett Smith riding in the back much of this race is in 24th, while with Seth Eggert last time by scored in 25th. Chad Reed's in 26th position, while Ford Martin's run in the back much of the race. He's in 27th with Jason Keffer and Drew Welker. I'm on a fight back there. Nick Sanchez rounds out the top 30. He's 26.5 seconds back from the field.
Sanchez will need a yellow to get back into it. Jesse Bowen and Gary Sexton are the only 2 drivers out of this race already. Sexton with the glitch that allowed him to, or rather did not allow him to get back into his race car. So his playoff run ends tonight at Talladega, and that will open up the opportunity for the group or Capps or Sanchez to race their way in as Sexton falls out. That concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Davison almost beaten by Rogers to the stripe, but it is the 33 car that leads lap number 51. So Davison, Rogers, and company there. Ryan Vargas now the man on the outside as the latest person to try and make it work, but they wreck a little bit further back. Trouble on the back straightaway. The yellow flag comes out once again. I saw one of the red and black cars spinning. It was Devin Henry in the 86 that went sideways.
A tough break for Devin Henry. He's still trying to get it turned the right way. We'll take a look at the replay here as they work their way off of turn number 2. Might see a slight bit of contact between, looks like, Alfredo and Devin Henry as they work their way off turn 2. A little bit of a checkup. Ooh, yep, right there. Brandon Brown and Devin Henry making contact. And, oh, another big contact by at least a couple of more drivers as well as they come down below that yellow line to try and avoid, but had nowhere to go as you're right on board with Devin Henry.
How interesting that, because that was basically dead-on wheel-to-wheel contact, but Nick DeGroot in trouble. He picks up damage in this incident, so one of his fast repairs gone. Remember, he was one of the 3 that needed to race his way to the next round of the playoffs tonight. Looking around here, Michael Massey picked up some damage in that incident. Seth Eggert in the 45 had been riding in the back all night and picked up damage, so he's probably down a fast repair as well. So a handful of cars involved in this, Justin Prince, but everybody that was involved likely down one of the 3 fast repairs.
Especially some of the hits here, and you're going to see the exact result here of what happened, because you see that checkup. It's exactly what we talked about. You have to be concerned about checkups and the runs from behind. Brown had a run, tried to get out of the gas quickly, but not enough time for him to react to avoid that contact in turn, James. Now, many of the drivers have to be concerned, because Brandon Brown's among the drivers who was in earlier incidents. It's also going to make things interesting for how drivers take the tires, or if drivers take said tires here.
Certainly an opportunity for drivers there to come down pit road. Other thing of note, I don't think Brandon Brown picked up any damage in that. It was just wheel-to-wheel contact with his left front and Henry's right rear. So I actually think that the 12 is okay and won't need to use one of his fast repairs. But all important, I think, Taylor Burst, to make sure that you have that box in your settings unchecked when you come down pit road. You don't want to accidentally lose one of those for the slightest bit of damage.
And we've seen that happen throughout the season of Monday Night Racing. Drivers who think they can get away with fixing the damage using the timer allotted for them to get it fixed instead of using that fast repair, but they forgot to uncheck it, causing them to waste a fast repair that they could use in case when they get ready to go here and racing.
Riding on board with Kyle Busch, who incidentally is a proud partner of one of the partners of Monday Night Racing, that of course being Max Pappas Innovations. Max Pappas Innovations and Monday Night Racing and partner for the Twitter contest throughout the course of the Monday Night Racing playoffs. Race fans tweeting across the board on Twitter for their shot to be this week's winner. And we can announce that this week's winner of the MPI contest and the $25 gift card to Max Pappas Innovations is Chris McClanahan at CLM488. So congratulations to Chris on winning this week's MPI Twitter contest. Max Pappas Innovations is the world's premier manufacturer of steering wheels. It was founded in 2009 by Max and Tatiana Pappas in Mooresville, North Carolina. MPI takes every aspect of construction and safety to heart to build their products in the most accurate and dedicated way possible. MPI partners have claimed 13 NASCAR championships, 4 World of Outlaws championships, 2 IndyCar titles, 2 Australian Supercars titles, and 1 NHRA championship. You can find out more about them at www.maxpappasinc.com. Yellow flag out once again in this Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega Superspeedway. We are just past the halfway point of tonight's race, working laps 54 of 94. So 40 to go when they cross the stripe. This should also be the one to go, I believe. It should give us the opportunity to see who may actually have something in these final few, handfuls of green flag runs, I would think. I just have this weird feeling that we're not done wrecking yet. And I have a feeling that some of these drivers in the back, and Ford Martin in particular stands out to me. We talked to Ford a little bit earlier this afternoon. He said the game plan was to just ride for about 70, 80 laps and then make the charge late, but just to try and hang on to the fast repairs, which usually works out. Doesn't necessarily pan out all the time. We saw that with Seth Eggert just a few moments ago. Seth got caught up in that latest incident, has to use a fast repair, but for the most part, usually if you can get way back of everything, you can wait and sit and let the drivers up at the front of the field get into each other, burn out their fast repairs, and it leaves you room to roam when you need to make moves the most.
At the same time, you need some luck though when it comes to that point though, James, because you need to be able to time up when you go through the field, as I believe we may have had some contact under yellow. Several cars have spun around in turn 2.
Trouble again here with some cars turned sideways. It's Michael Massey and Brett Baldeck, and that will extend the yellow flag one more lap. Baldeck came to a stop in the middle of the corner. So I don't think he was the issue. It was Massey, who I think might have gotten caught between the apron and the high banks at Talladega. That's, to me, what it looked like. These cars so thin, so prone, and not necessarily used to differences in banking, then it's possible that got checked out. But also an incident a little bit further ahead, Gabe Wood just gassed it up early and ended up in trouble, and he collects, I believe, Seth Eggert gets hit again, and Garrett Miller in the 36 involved in trouble as well.
Certainly that looks like to be the case, as you see on board right now with Gabe Wood. As, he just, these spin the tires by the looks of it. I mean, just listening to the car, he spun the tires just a little bit, trying to get up to speed a little to try to catch up to the front pack, and that's what we saw happen. So unfortunately, another fast repair wasted away for Gabe Wood and a couple of other cars out there as well.
One of the more interesting aspects of racing these cars at Talladega, Justin Prince, you wouldn't necessarily think that getting around here under caution would be a challenge, but it is a unique challenge to this combination that is, I think, more difficult this week than it has been in any other week of Season 2 of Monday Night Racing up to this point.
And the main thing is, when it comes to that situation, and this can happen in any type of oval too, James, is in first gear, if you hit the gas even a little bit too quickly, you get that massive bit of wheel spin. It can happen on the start or restart too. It happened nearly to Devin Henry, I noticed at one point, where he lost a little bit of ground because he was bouncing and bumping around on the apron. Was able to gather it up quickly, though, in that case. Here at the high banks of Talladega, it adds that extra dynamic of you spin the tires and, say, go from 5,000 RPMs to 7,000 RPMs, you're saying bye-bye time, because you are essentially lighting up and heating up those tires quickly and disconnecting the grip and the contact patch from the rest of the racetrack, trying to speed up quickly, going that difference in miles an hour to essentially simplify things. In other words, it can happen a lot of places, but here, it's just so easy to be able to forget about that type of circumstance. You see that compared to the others. Everyone else is in sixth gear.
I think that's something that often goes overlooked, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with these Indy cars in the sim, Taylor Burrish, but their RPM range is incredible compared to what you see with the stock cars. Stock cars will top out at about 9,000, 10,000 RPM. These things can go 12, 13, 14, 15,000 RPM, and that gives you a little bit more torque to play with, which in the low gears can't catch you out at points.
It certainly can, so that's the critical thing of making sure that you hit your shift points exactly as needed. We'll see some of these drivers try to stay in that fifth gear for as long as possible before they go up into that top gear in order to help continue building their momentum, because really, if you stay in sixth gear at these speeds, it could still mess up a good run for you.
It could get very intriguing if we see a few more cars have to burn fast repairs because of wrecks under yellow, which is about the last thing I think any of us expected in any race, but such is the case in C'est La Vie tonight in Monday Night Racing. The Big Green Egg Indy 250 Dove set to go back to green flag racing. Lap 57 up on the board after this extended yellow to clean up for that incident in turn 2. Davison and Kyle Busch, your leaders, as we take off and go back under green once again in Alabama. Better restart, I think, for the field. Rogers kept it a little bit tighter. Kyle Busch getting that run on the outside. He's got help from Ryan Vargas, who now jumps to the inside. And Rogers might go to the top side to make it 3 wide for the race lead as they enter the backstretch.
He's tried this a couple times. It hasn't worked out in some cases. Will it work out here is the big question. Just not enough pull to get completely clear, especially with no car in front to pull off of. And everyone else is now compacting forward. Don't be surprised, though, to see Anthony Alfredo be the next person to try that. Or how about the 10 machine trying to poke out to the high side?
The 10 machine indeed. DJ Cummings, the in-race reporter, trying to head topside. I see Nick DeGroot just peeking his way into the shot as we go on board with Cummings, the number 10 machine, looking to the inside of Will Rogers. He's got Nick DeGroot right behind him, trying to chase down Dylan Welch and maybe potentially become the third or the second car in that outside line.
He's going to try to do that, but now he ducks to the inside of the racetrack, now stays in the middle as they work their way up through turns 3 and 4 to the high bank. Close action between the top two right there as Will Rogers, Kyle Busch, and don't forget a race leader, James Davison, fighting there as they come off of turn 4.
James Davison holding that inside line, Busch holding the outside line, Dylan Welch looking for some sort of place to get around either one of them, but I don't think he's got enough room to generate the momentum he needs to get around either Busch or Davison, and that's something that I think we'll see a few of these drivers try and set up as he nearly makes contact with Ryan Vargas. One car a little bit further back spinning down to the inside. That's Garrett Smithley, I believe, in the 52, who got sent sideways, but will stay green flag racing. He spins on the apron, so no yellow flag.
Believe the 11 machine with Steve Lafon also getting collected in that, but everyone else has gathered themselves up calm and surely. The top 15 separated by 9/10 of a second at the moment, and some new faces starting to slowly move their way up through the field, like Starkneck, like Pardis once again, like Moore. We haven't mentioned Moore all day, is also a part of this lead pack, and don't forget about Wilson, who wants to try and move his way back up towards the front, so we look on board with Moore.
Covey Moore out of Calgary, Alberta. First time we've called his name all night long, and look who he's come up to the front with. As he tucks in a little bit further back in this group, but he's brought a few friends too. Preston Pardis is making his way towards the front. In the middle of that pack, right there behind Dylan Welch in the orange car, it's Nick Sanchez, who again racing for his spot in the next round of the playoffs, but is already down 2 of his 3 fast repairs tonight. But I think his strategy is pretty clear, pretty obvious, JP. It's get to the front, control the front, and stay there. A lot like what Denny Hamlin tried to do in the Daytona 500 a night ago.
Absolutely, and he's been trying to poke his way through any hole that opens up. For example, that middle line opening up with Dylan Welch. Going to quickly fill that up, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gives very little slack in some of these cases, even with the risk of damage, because we've seen how he's been able to make some moves. He sees an opening, he'll try and jump right through it like a hula hoop.
The interesting question to me, I think we've seen very clearly that the way to actually make passes is to back up on somebody and get a run. As Nick Sanchez tries to do just that, he goes to the outside of Kyle Busch. But with everybody so tightly bunched up here at the front, Justin Prince, are the drivers in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th going to be able to leave enough room for somebody in 2nd to make the run that they need to get clear of these leaders, potentially drop down in front of them on the inside?
I think that's going to be a difficult thing to do because some of these drivers are not willing to back it up too much to be able to build up those runs. Drivers like Dylan Welch are, but others, they're just content on riding right now, just being in position to be able to fight for the race victory and take advantage of mistakes, or other drivers trying different lines to try and get those said runs before they die off and then they pass them underneath. So it's almost a balancing act right now of drivers trying to find that mix. It just looks like the drivers in the middle line, for example, seem content on riding around and having the track position.
We shall see whether or not that strategy changes over the course of the next 32 laps left in this race. Kyle Busch now in the middle still, and Sanchez trying to go to the outside. Oh, it was close for Dylan Welch just a little bit further back as we look off the rear wing of Rowdy's car, and you see all the chaos that ensues behind him. Tucked up on his rear bumper, though, how about Preston Pardis in the 90 machine? P-Money, who won in the Super Late Models at Michigan back in December, trying to go get another win and punch his ticket to the next round of the playoffs. He nearly bounced off of Nick Sanchez, though, coming out of 2.
With that, that'll cause a big scatter movement, but they now tightly bunch back up through the field as you're on board with Preston Pardis just on a knife's edge, trying to hang on to his race car to keep up with the back bumper of that Rowdy energy drink of Kyle Busch as they come off of turn number 4 down the front straightaway here. Nick Sanchez trying to get that outside run still going.
Sanchez is trying to lead the outside lane, but they just don't have enough help, and they can't get a run off of any of the cars in front of them because, well, Sanchez is the first car in that 3rd line. Meanwhile, Dylan Welch, I saw back out of it just a little bit. I think he senses that something might be happening, but no sooner do I say that than the 14 machine ducks immediately to the inside, and Nick Sanchez will follow suit, and it'll be 3 by 3 by 3 again with Will Rogers, the lone man up top.
I think Welch does feel that something could happen, and that's why he went to the bottom, but Welch actually clipped the apron, went too low against the yellow line, and had to save it. Now keep in mind with these cars, With the difference in banking, that could be catastrophic if he hit it at the wrong place at the wrong time with the banking. Welch looking really squirrely under steering now.
Close moment there for Dylan Welch, the reporter for the Motor Racing Network and NBC Sports. He'll go way up top, though. Brandon Brown in the middle, and then it is, or rather, the middle of that sandwich on the top line, because it's still LaRonge just parading the group as we ride on board with Dylan Welch. He'll drop back down. It's still the same two at the front, and Preston Pardish in the 90 machine trying to make something happen. But what a move from Matt Stolnick. He got a huge run on the outside and is able to at least draw even with the 51 and the 33, but yet again the run stalls out, and maybe he'll be able to get clear, but it won't be enough. It'll still be as you were in the middle and the bottom at the front of this field.
Notice a little bit of side drafting happening right there. We saw that from Matt Stolnick. He got right up against and then just...
Trouble a little bit further back, though. It's Brandon Brown and Dylan Welch who made contact with one another, and the yellow flag will come out once again. That was brewing for about 5 laps, Justin Prince, and eventually it's Welch who makes contact. I think he bounces off of Jason Keffer and just trying to go for a gap that was closing quickly as Brown was trying to come to the bottom. Welch and Brown bounce off of one another, and the yellow flag is out once again.
I think they both wanted the same spot, absolutely. You're going to see it right here where Welch elects to, after pushing Brown up to the top line, go to the bottom, gets a run in an opening after this checkup. But the thing is, Brown also wants to go and stay in the middle line and join those other 3 cars. They make contact, and as you mentioned, they get hooked together with significant damage. Several drivers just avoiding it down on the apron as they slide all the way to the safer barrier.
So they drop down to the safer barrier, smack the fence. It'll be at least 1 faster pair for both of them. I think that puts Brandon Brown on 2 faster pairs used as well, if my math is correct for Welch. Is that 1? Is that 2? It's close. I know he's at least down 1 out of this.
This might be his last faster pair looking at everything right now. We'll have to wait and see when he comes down pit road. But this is going to be the time period where we're going to start seeing drivers use their final fast repairs here, and possibly if they get caught up in one more incident, it's a done day for them. And for some, if they are in the championship run for the playoffs, it could mean a chance for a championship is over here tonight at Talladega.
We'll see if we can get a look at live points in just a few moments as these drivers come down pit road for service. But the faster pair tally is certainly going to be one we'll keep track of. And right now, you see Gary Sexton, of course, on the outside looking in. It's Max Kennan and Nick Sanchez that are the other 2 out. As we come down pit road, that could shuffle a little bit, but pretty consistent themes here, I think. The first, Gary Sexton is done. The second, Nick Sanchez still has to just about win this race to have any sort of shot whatsoever, JP.
And I think the third is Max Kennan has elected to stay at the back just about this entire run as, hold on, we got a car in the grass. Devin Henry spun it out on pit lane into the middle of the infield.
Well, it makes things a little bit interesting. Got sideways, and again, that torque that we talked about a little bit earlier just got on the gas too quickly, Taylor Burris, and that's what sent the 86 around.
These cars are so finicky when it comes to throttle input. You can easily loop your car around at any point, even under low speed, such as coming off pit road, as we just saw right there on the replay. And unfortunately, he's going to lose a lot of time in positions.
So Henry will slide towards the back of the field, and we will slide toward our next break. We'll take a quick pause, but don't go anywhere. More coverage of the Big Green Egg 250 from Talladega coming up here as you're watching coverage of Monday Night Racing on Podium eSports.
For years, people had to get professional tools off of a truck.
That's me.
But we know that tool trucks only come around maybe once a week.
You want to go check out what's in the van?
Now Dave knows that his NAPA Auto Parts store delivers parts multiple times a day to his shop, and they carry the professional line of Carlyle tools. Carlyle offers quality tools with a lifetime warranty on his hand tools and a significant savings over mobile tool trucks. And you can forget about the weekly payments and expensive finance charges.
Just pay me, every week for the rest of your life.
Carlyle Tools, as close as your local NAPA Auto Parts store.
Welcome back to coverage of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring here on Podium eSports. It's the Big Green Egg Indy 250 from Talladega. James Pike, Taylor Burris, Justin Prince, and Ryan Bauer bringing you all the action from Alabama. We now turn to our Bryant Shack Technology in-race reporter, DJ Cummings, who, while we were away at break, exclaimed to us that things are getting really intense in the middle of this field. So for those who haven't had the chance to race this car and track combo, DJ, can you explain what it's like as these drivers start clicking off laps towards the end?
You have not figured out what 250 miles an hour feels like until you start driving it. It is basically put your back all the way into the seat and just hope for the best. And when, especially now when we're going, we were 3 abreast for 3-4 rows deep. Those are those moments where you get really tense and you're like, please don't wreck, don't wreck, don't wreck. We had a couple of, like I said earlier, we had a couple of close calls. Just trying to make sure, I got 2 quick repairs left, just trying to make sure we get ourselves a good finisher. But really, I really recommend anybody that wants to do hosted races or if you're in a league and you're looking for a car track combination, this is a absolute blast and you will have so much fun doing it.
From what you've gathered, how early or late do you think you need to go from about the 10th spot where you are in order to try and make the run for the race win? Is it something where you need to start going with about 15 laps left, or is it a 1 lap, 2 lap to go scenario?
Well, I think right now we got about 25 laps. We're good. I think we're good just to hang out in 10th here until we get to about 10 to go, and then it's where we'll start inching our way around, see if there's a couple of open holes, see if you can get yourself move up a spot or 2, and then once you get to 2 to 1 to go, it's every man for himself, and it's definitely go time. But I think I'm content right now to hang in the 10th spot, 10th, 11th spot for the next 15 laps or so, and then I think it's time to make the charge.
We'll see how you do in this final third of the race. DJ, thanks for the time again, and best of luck.
10-4, guys. Enjoy it.
DJ Cummings will restart in the 11th position when we go back. Green flag racing, which should come here on lap 71. Lights are off on the pace truck, and Rogers is going to lead us to green. Will Rogers for Space Station Gaming, of course, integral to the team that helped put together the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series effort for 2021. Going to try and lead this field back around in about 24 laps or so, but for now in a pretty good spot as he will be the leader, bringing us back to green flag racing with Stephen Wilson now on the outside. He started this race on the inside of that front row as Davison didn't get up through the gears the way he needed to, and he immediately spins off to the inside. So James Davison down a faster pair, no doubt, but out of the lead, out of second place, and now is going to need a caution to get caught back up.
That's exactly what we talked about, Taylor, with the torque. Right there, immediately got too quick on the gas.
Certainly was the case, as we just saw right here on the replay. James Davison gets on the power, and just a little bit too much power there on the throttle input, and around he goes as he continues on his way with that damage, trying to limp it back to pit road.
It catches out even the IndyCar professionals. That is the kind of torque you're working with in these things. As Kyle Busch was scored the leader by 12 1/1000ths of a second at the stripe the last time by. Matt Stolnick on the outside, though. He's got help from Preston Pardis. Nick DeGroota's up there. How about Ron Capps? The NAPA machine we haven't seen up near the front all that much. Jason Keffer with a big move to the outside, as you'll see him appear on the corner of your screen over on the right-hand side. He had a big run down the back straightaway, but it'll fizzle out as the drivers sail underneath him, and he loses all his friends through 3 and 4.
Looks like Ryan Vargas, though, wants to try and find some friends on the high side, and Vargas, of course, having a solid performance at Daytona in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this past weekend. Was involved in some of the trouble, but was able to claw his way out of the grass after a good solid 20 seconds. Looking very quick, though, on this high line, carrying more than 240 miles an hour, even at 242.
There are a lot of people who are thinking about going with Ryan Vargas. It's Preston Pardis who will actually go with Ryan Vargas. To the high side goes Peabody, and will Vargas follow suit? No, he won't. He'll drop down to that middle lane, so Pardis will get hung out to dry on the outside lane. Jason Keffer should get a big run, closing in on Vargas as it is still save 2. Marshalling the bottom and the top, Stephen Wilson and Kyle Busch.
Here they come rocketing across the start-finish line. Wilson has a great run, but here comes Kyle Busch with help from Matt Stolnick as they rocket through turns 1 and 2 and on board with Anthony Alfredo. He is in a hornet's nest of cars as they come off of turn 2 down the front back straightaway here. He'll dive to the inside with a big run of momentum.
Alfredo once again to the bottom, trying to find some sort of real estate, but nothing doing for him. It's Vargas up top. Pardis looked up there as well. You'll see a few cars try and shuffle to the high lane and maybe make something happen. Vargas trying to work to the outside of Keffer and Stolnick, but nothing going for him. Dylan Welch just decided to climb up there too. Looks like a little bit more company further back. As contact to the middle of the pack. They'll wreck on the entry into turn 1. Yellow flag will come out once again. And I couldn't tell who that was immediately, but Brandon Brown is one of them, and Brandon might be the first driver down all his fast repairs, but it was contact between Pardis and Garrett Smithley in the 51 car. Those two end up starting this chain of events that leads to the yellow flag.
Yeah, Garrett Smithley, I think, was the main trigger. You'll see this from Brown, though, who had nowhere to go after. Smithley just stepped out, going to the corner just about, going a bit to the left, smacking Pardis, and Brown just nowhere to go. Again, involved in major trouble, and again, significant damage for Brown, and another wreck.
Just nothing you can do if you're Brandon Brown in that situation. Taylor Burris, things happening so quickly, and no time to react, basically.
No, you do not have any time to react whatsoever here with these cars at Talladega. If you see more of the replay here that they come into turn 2, there's the contact. And for these drivers who are trying to watch up and check up, they have nothing to do. It's just hold on and hope you have one fast repair left in your pocket.
You wonder how many of them might be a little bit more conservative as some of these other cars come down pit road. But yes, Brandon Brown, I think, done for the evening. He'll be the first casualty, which may be helpful, I think, for some of the playoff drivers, and might not be so great for Nick Sanchez, because that's one more car that isn't in playoff contention that is going to occupy a spot near the bottom of the final rundown. And I think that puts the pressure even more on the 96 to try and go out and win this race. We'll take a look at live points momentarily to see where people sit as they get back going and get caught up to the pace car. But there it is, Nick Sanchez 15 outside the good. Max Kennan sitting there 11 points outside of the line. But as you said earlier, Justin Prince, Kennan has been sitting at the back and waiting, but has damage this time though, so he may be outright in trouble, and that may end up being his day over now that we look at the 21.
Possibly, maybe, but we'll have to see. I think there's still some opportunities if he's got a couple caution flags to be able to get himself back in position, if he can get himself back into the race car quickly. The problem is, you can already see he's already jumped out of the race car for the time being, I think, to see what happened there as he's taking the tow. And it can lose you a ton of time being on the tow, up to 3 minutes here at Talladega, and that could absolutely be critical. But in regards to Sanchez, he needs a ton of madness, to say the very least, to break out. He basically needs pandemonium.
Gotta win. Gotta win. I think there's...
Yes.
We've said it multiple times tonight, and I hate to simplify it that much. I do like the drama, the strategy, and the potential play of, you know, maybe being able to point your way in, but there's so much that has to go right for Nick Sanchez in order for him to point his way into the next round of the playoffs, that the simple answer here, and the most likely and most probable case, is that he's just got to go out and win this race.
And he's got to time it up too perfectly if he wants to win this race with the run, because I have a feeling that third line is going to come into play on the last lap at the way things are going, because we've seen the third line come out with the very edge for the lead lap a majority of the time, James, some of these runs down the front straightaway. Don't be surprised if Sanchez, if he can position himself in a smart and perfect situation, is one of those drivers trying to make that edge of a run come forward to get it by a nose cone.
Will be tricky, will be tough as the laps continue to click off, down to 18 to go as Stephen Wilson and company lead this field through 3 and 4 under the yellow flag. But while we have a moment, we'll take a moment to remind you all of some of the upcoming events we'll find in the world of iRacing and Podium eSports. Lots on tap over the course of the next few weeks. It continues on Sunday night. The MPI Cup Series heads to Richmond Raceway for round 7 of their 2021 campaign. You'll see that at 9:15 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium eSports. Then we're back on air Monday night, February 22nd. It's the first race of the round of 10. It's the Cup cars from Dover International Speedway. Tricky test that Monster Mile always is. That broadcast starts at 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium 2, as well as the Podium eSports Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. Following night, eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series heads to Homestead Miami Speedway for round 2 of their campaign. Pre-race at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, race broadcast at 9 p.m. Eastern on iRacing's Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. Then, next Wednesday, it's the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series from USA International Speedway at 9 on twitch.tv/Podium 2. Then the next broadcast we have for the Midwest Sim Racing Association Premier Series from Phoenix Raceway, round 5 of their campaign, coming your way March 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern. That too on twitch.tv/Podium 2. What do you think is the best strategy play in this situation, Taylor Burris? I think if you're in this field, you've got a few different options, but if you're picking places, where do you want to be right now? What do you think is the right way to get to the front when the checkered flag falls?
Well, pretty much the safest place right now to be is that lead car. We've seen how difficult it is for drivers to pass that lead car on the bottom of the racetrack here. We see Stephen Wilson is now back up front of the field, and we know how long he held onto the race lead on that inside lane. Now, for drivers who are towards the back, we still have 17 laps to go. 17 laps to go may seem like a very short period of time, but with 42nd laps here around Talladega, it's still a lot of room to make up ground and time on your competitors here. So the thing is to time the runs needed and be patient. Wait for the runs to come to you in order to help build that momentum up would be probably the best plan for you if you want to win here tonight at Talladega.
It goes back to the same problem we talked about, Justin Prince. You've got to find room to create the run, but everybody's been so bunched up behind the leaders that they haven't been able to get enough space.
And I think at this point, we might see drivers try and force their own space almost with the way this is going with about 5 laps to go or so. That's where I feel the runs are still going to start to come in. So it all depends too, though, on who's around you and how comfortable you are with those said drivers. Because if you can back up and indicate, okay, I'm going for it, it's going to be easier than if you don't have friends.
Stephen Wilson, Kyle Busch leading us back to green flag racing here at Talladega in the Big Green Egg Indy 250 as they will go wheel to wheel, side pod to side pod. Will Rogers and Matt Stolnick ticked up there, but how about Ryan Vargas, who might be able to take advantage of the restart here? He's got some help and some company in the form of DJ Cummings up top, and those two might be able to get to Stephen Wilson if the runs play out correctly.
Talk about a run that's timed perfectly. Look at Nick DeGroot right now. He is working up towards the top side of the racetrack, has to now drop back to that middle groove now, but he had a big run from about 5/10 of a car length back, and now is right there in that lead pack.
Is indeed in the lead pack. How about the NASCAR duo of Stolnick and Cummings together in that middle lane just behind Kyle Busch? Looks like Dylan Welch up there in the 14 machine too. Here he comes to the bottom behind Will Rogers.
Taking a look from Alfredo as well. He's among the drivers who I expect to try and make the third line work. No, he actually juked out Vargas. He might try and get Vargas now to get stuck on the top line here and taking our position here.
So Vargas now alone on the top line. Welch caught the apron, I think, a little bit. Lyons down there in the bottom as well. One car hard into the wall a little bit further back in this field. We'll see if it brings out the yellow flag. Don't think we're going to have it yet, though, but it is about 15, 16 cars up here at the very pointy end of this pack that either are going to race for the victory or run themselves into the ground wrecking. One of the two is definitely true, Taylor Burris. We're just not sure which just yet.
Which will come first? That's going to be the answer to that question right here. There's a little bit of contact between Dylan Welch and Nick Sanchez as they go 3 wide with Nick DeGroot. Sanchez gets behind Vargas to try to push him up to the front of the field, but it's to no avail as you're on board with Dylan Welch as he tries to find an opening. He may duck to the inside as he's trying to take a peek to the outside, but it will not work. He's stuck in that middle groove.
Look who's decided to rejoin the party after his mishap on the last restart. James Davison in the 33 is now back down to the bottom, and he's trying to find his way towards the front as Anthony Alfredo thought about taking it 3 wide. May well still take it 3 wide, but manages to split the NASCAR teammates, so he'll be the 3rd car in that middle lane. You see him just off the right-hand corner of your screen as we ride on board with the 33 of Davison.
He and Wilson have done a phenomenal job as IndyCar veterans to be able to cut their way through the pack when they've been in traffic and as well control the bottom line. Both of them have been similar in their driving styles in doing so, and they've kept their cars clean and out of trouble for the most part tonight, outside of that mistake we talked about from Davidson. Really impressed with what I've seen from both of them so far throughout the night.
Very impressive work indeed by a lot of these folks in the top 10, all who have had varying stories in this Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega, but all coming together as we reach the climax of this race. Just over 10 laps to go at Talladega, and Stephen Wilson back in the spot that he dominated from so early in this race. Started on pole, controlling from the very bottom on the inside, but can the people behind he and Kyle Busch get organized to create the run, to get around them? If they work together, it's possible, but there's going to need to be a lot of coordination between the drivers from about 5th on back in order to make it happen.
How about this? Chad Reed running in 15th position in this lead pack here. He's missing one of his wings on the front nose of that number 22, Dallara, as he's still in that main draft behind Ford Martin as they come off of turn 2. Talk about a great run as a guy looks like Alfredo's in the wall.
Alfredo gets fenced, put into the wall. He's going to slide down onto the apron, though, and we will stay green flag racing for the moment. But Alfredo in trouble, and he likely will have to take a tow. That could well end Anthony Alfredo's show. So with this race is another wreck a little bit further up in the field. 2 cars now into the fence. We'll wait to see if race control throws the yellow flag there, but nothing yet still. And it is still Stephen Wilson and Kyle Busch in control of this as we come to 10 laps to go.
Let's take a look what happened with the first of these incidents here on your replay real quickly, and you'll see Davidson trying to run to the bottom of the racetrack, just wobbles up the track, tries to go to the middle, and ends up getting into Alfredo's tire. That causes the first of the incidents, and the second incident was in 3 and 4. Now the caution is out for a 3rd incident involving some of these drivers.
Believe it was Matt Stalnack in the 41 machine who ended up in trouble. Here's the second incident that took place. It was Ryan Vargas who was the casualty over in turn 4, and then Stalnack had an incident over in 1 and 2. He was up on his lid for a moment, but he's the one that actually brings out the yellow flag. We'll see if we can get a look at what happened to Stalnack in 1 and 2 this time by. You can see how nuts it was, but all of a sudden he was there and then stuck up in the fence and gone. And that's what brings out the yellow flag inside of 10 laps to go. So it splits up Stalnack and Cummings as you see what remains of at least that iteration of the 41 car. But still time left as a lot of these cars are going to take the wave around and try and get themselves back on the lead lap. And for Max Kennan in particular, you want somebody to watch so far as the points are concerned. Kennan's been riding all night long to avoid the madness at the front. Now I think he has at least one faster pair of bank Taylor Burrs to put himself in a position to make the next round of the playoffs after being on the outside looking in for a good chunk of this evening.
Certainly looks to be that way, but he still has to survive for the next 9 laps here at Talladega. Of course, anything can happen. We just saw that happening here a few moments ago where we had 3 cars involved in 3 separate incidents, and we didn't have a caution for 2 of them, but we finally had the last one for Matt Stalnack. So he could be fine right now, but once we go back green flag racing, one false mistake, and if he just goes up against the wall with bad damage and continues without making more issues, we're going to stay green. So he has to keep it clean.
You worry about the folks that are potentially in trouble and are down to their last faster pair. They're the ones I think that are in the most trouble in all of this and may well be really fighting for spots. As you take a look at live points on the right side of your screen once again, Stalnack with that wreck now level with Gary Sexton on points to make it into the next round of the playoffs, but provided he can gain any sort of time whatsoever, should be in good shape. Sanchez still on the outside looking in, Kennan on the outside looking in as well, but again, Kennan has waited and has not run near the front all night. Any sort of gain at the very end of this race, and he is likely to the good. Nick Sanchez, though, in 3rd, still fighting to potentially race his way in. However, If Sanchez can get the job done, then it falls upon Max Kinnon and Matt Stallnetz to figure out which one of those two may end up going home. That's the other thing that we haven't really had the chance to talk much about, Justin Prince, because we haven't seen Sanchez actually get the lead. But if he does get the lead, it will bump somebody else out, and then it gets very intriguing.
I think so, because Sanchez has been very aggressive to get himself in position here to potentially go for a run for the lead. He knows the scenario. He knows he has to perform. He's someone that's shown throughout the entire night, if he has an opening on the third line, he's taking it. He's been able to test things out, test out various runs, what works, what doesn't work, what moves to be able to make. And I think all of that's going to be very vital for the closing stages now, if you want to win this race. It's going to be critical, though, he times out the moves in the right spots, because if he does it in a wrong moment, he's knocked out. He does it at the right time with a run, he's getting a victory.
Could be feast or famine for Nick Sanchez, who is the driver to watch in this final set of laps. Of course, there are green-white checkers available as well. We can't forget that piece of this too, because we may end up going beyond these 8 scheduled laps if we get a late yellow flag, Taylor Burris, and that could make things interesting too, especially for the drivers who have pit repairs. But how about this strategy play? Stefan Wilson decides to come in from the race lead, and he will come down pit road for service. I wonder whether or not he just doesn't trust the drivers around him, or whether or not something's amiss on that 25 car. But in either case, Stefan Wilson down pit road and will give up control of the field to come down for service.
Very interesting pit call right here. We're going to see what he decides to do. Will he take fuel only, or will he take tires? The jacks are not up on that number 28, as he is still on pit road, as he's on there for quite some time. So this must be something more serious here, as he is letting the entire field go by as he's still on pit road. And we'll have to see what his strategy is, or the reasoning behind this, as something must have happened.
No clue what's gone down with the number 25 machine. We'll see if we can get word as to what happened with Stefan Wilson, but it now means that Kyle Busch, really for the first time all night, Justin Prince, is going to ride on the inside lane and be the control car down on the bottom instead of the middle.
And I think it's going to be critical on how this plays out, on how he times up the run, because you do it too early, we've seen how big the runs can be down the back straightaway, and you immediately lose the lead. You do it too late, you potentially stack up the field and cause some absolute trouble. So that timing is going to be critical from him and his spotter to be able to know when to launch and try and keep this lead and momentum on the bottom line, because we've seen it be consistent. If you're the first car on the bottom, you're likely sticking as the first car on the bottom unless you are able to make a massive run on the second or third line.
Taylor Burris, do you have a report for us on what happened with the 25 car?
I guess he had some issues that he had to handle right quick, so apparently had to come down pit road, but he is good to go and will be back on the track.
So the car is good, but the driver loses the track position. That could be one we may want to watch, and it might change the way Wilson plays this. I wonder if you're at the 25, if you decide to hang out back. But as it stands, it will be Kyle Busch leading us to green in the Big Green Egg Indy 250 here at Talladega. 7 laps, going to be 6 laps to go when they come to the line of the man who is outside, a man who needs to win it, a man who will cherish the track position. Nick Sanchez in the 96 car up front with help from DJ Cummings in the 10. Those two have to find something here and have to figure out how to get together. He's going to go to the bottom and try and keep Will Rogers at bay.
Here they come, building up speed and momentum. Kyle Busch will lead them, and now Nick Sanchez will up to the outside of the racetrack. James Davison's going to try to shoot the middle and give a big push. Contact is made as they work down the back straightaway.
They slide down to the apron, down up the racetrack. Caution flag is out as Davidson smacks the wall. He gets slammed hard by Baldeck. Several cars scatter as they try to avoid him in turn 3. And with 5 to go this time, we are under caution.
Absolutely no doubt here. That is entirely Nick Sanchez racing for his playoff life that starts all of that. I would argue as Sanchez was absolutely on the gas, no question, from the very beginning here, and just trying to make sure that he could hang on to that top lane. He was trying to block James Davison and just got in front of the 33 in time, and they just clipped each other. It was tight, it was close, but off the number 96 goes to the 33 into the 51, sends them both down into the pavement underneath the racetrack, and then they shoot back up, and there's absolutely nothing that poor Brett Baldock could have done.
No, it certainly was not the case, as the aggression is going to continue to rise, and it's going to be even more ruthless as they are trying to get their way through. There's the hard contact with Baldock and Davison, so that's going to be a fast repair probably for Davison and possibly a DNF for Brett Baldock.
Baldock may well be one of the first ones to be down all his fast repairs. It's certainly close. I know he's at least burned one of them. Could be burning 2 or 3 here, depending on how it goes. But very, very close quarters racing, and maybe more importantly, Nick Sanchez is your race leader. And I wonder if we can get a look at live points now just to see what that looks like under the yellow flag, because if Sanchez gets the victory, that changes everything so far as the playoff bubble is concerned. Justin?
100%, and that shuffles things to where Max Kennan would be among the drivers, I think, in panic mode, and a couple other drivers here potentially, depending on how things fare out. The tough thing's going to be, though, can Sanchez keep the lead? Here's the live points. Gary Sexton is now cheering, I think, on his couch at this point, looking towards potential result points, depending on how things shuffle out, or rather, Sanchez will shuffle up, should I rather say. Things can get very interesting now with all of that right around the bubble with the 65 as well, also in a bit of trouble.
Will Rogers there also in the mix, as we'll see the shuffle a little bit as they come down pit road. But what's very clear here is I think once you get past the 28 of Ron Capps, who actually is pretty well to the good riding in 6th at this point, he can hang around, and so long as he doesn't end up in trouble, he'll be okay, I think. And everybody north of him feels pretty solid as well. Even Nick DeGroot, who was on the outside looking in, looking very solid as far as his playoff chances are concerned. But you get down to the bottom here, Gary Sexton, Kyle Busch even a little bit further back in this, though he's got enough of a buffer to where I think he'll be okay. But Will Rogers, Matt Stolnick, Nick Sanchez, Max Cannon, there are about 4 or 5 drivers, Justin Prince, who may well be out or in, depending on how the permutations and combinations play out.
How about this combination just coming in? Second cause incident of the race, a black flag, James, for Nick Sanchez for that move. That is going to cost him the playoffs, possibly right here. That just changed the race.
That could be the death knell, and I couldn't tell if it was out of frustration or whether or not there might have been a technical issue, but just smacked the inside wall over in turn 3 as well, so he may end up having to burn a fast repair. But Sanchez out of the race lead for the black flag, getting dinged by race control for responsibility on that last yellow with James Davison. So they put the blame at Sanchez's feet. Sanchez now buried on pit road and could be deep in trouble. Meanwhile, Kobe Moore also getting a violation and a penalty for changing lanes before the start-finish line. Goodness gracious, how does this change things? As it's DJ Cummings, our in-race reporter, who now assumes the race lead. We'll bring in DJ one more time, and this is not necessarily what I think you expected this early compared to, or at least maybe this late rather in the going, DJ.
Yeah, I kind of wish y'all didn't cue me up because now I'm nervous as hell. I mean, this is, I was more anticipating being like around 5th or 6th for this restart, and then sticking with that middle lane because it was working really well. But now that I'm out here up front, it's going to be stick to the bottom and hope for the best because can't pass under the yellow line. So if I just stick to the bottom, doesn't look like, unless they get a phenomenal run, they're not able to pass on the middle or the inside. So we're gonna hug the yellow line and hope for the best.
How worried are you about the restart now, knowing that that's about the one spot where things can fall a little bit out of your hands?
I think it's really just going to come down to how much I time it. If I go too early, then I'm going to get too far out ahead, and then I'm going to get too big of a run, and then I'm going to lose the lead. So I'm probably going to go a little conservative here. and we will definitely see how it goes.
Be interesting. We'll let you get back to it for what could be the last restart. DJ, thanks for the time and good luck.
10-4, hold on to your hats, boys.
Thank goodness I'm not wearing a hat, so I don't have anything to hold on to besides my full mop of hair as the field enters its way through turn 3. But they wreck in the back of the field again. I think that's Ryan Vargas who ended up in trouble, and Kyle Busch as well. So another delayed green flag, which means we're going to have 2 laps to go, and I think 1 lap to go. So this might be a natural 1-lap shootout to finish off this race. That's piece 1. Piece 2 of note is that Nick Sanchez disconnected and pulled himself behind the wall after he received the black flag. So he is out of contention for the playoff spot, which means that folks like Matt Stolnick and Max Kinnon, I think, can breathe a little bit easier because Sanchez becomes the second driver that we think is going to go home tonight. Gary Sexton, who we thought might have been out of it, may well not be done just yet as you watch what happened to Ryan Vargas, another one of those torque issues where he just got on the gas and missed the shift, couldn't quite hit it, and spun himself out in the middle of the back straightaway.
Certainly is the case right now as we keep an eye and see what will happen, but it's very interesting to see how that issue's been happening for a lot of drivers here tonight. So we'll have to keep an eye and see on this restart here, Justin, of what's going to happen.
Well, this is going to be crazy too, because this is going to be it too, James. This is where whoever gets the biggest run at a turn 4 and down that front straightaway might be the winner. This is about to go potentially 3-4 wide full send.
It could be 3, 4, 5 here. We'll see if we can get live points one more time for you before we go green flag racing, just so you have a sense of where everybody sits. Nick Sanchez definitely out. Gary Sexton on the outside looking in. Max Kinnon with work to do, and they will all be rooting against Matt Stolnick in the 41 car. If he ends up in the back, then it will be Sexton and Kinnon that might have a shot at this. Kinnon, though, could end up leapfrogging both of them, and Will Rogers needs a good finish too. He's buried in the back, so there's breathing room for he and for Kyle Busch, but certainly work to be done. Meanwhile, Ron Capps and Nick DeGroot would do well to hold the spots that they have up in the top half of this field. Now, 3rd and 4th as we enter what could be the last restart, what should be a 1-lap shootout. So there's the playoff picture for you, but all eyes, I think, towards the back. It's effectively Kinnon v. Stolnick for what could be the final spot in the round of 10. It will be very close for one of them. We'll just have to see how it pans out, JP.
And both of them are towards the back absolutely as well, so it's going to be critical how many cars they can pass in the span of a lap, and how many potential incidents they can dodge in lap could be what determines which of those drivers get in. It's going to be critical to keep your eyes open. This is about to be the most hectic racing we've seen all night.
DJ Cummings, the control car in that ever so important and precious inside lane at the very front of this field. This could be the last restart. We do have green, white checkers available if things get a little bit wild, but DJ Cummings brings us back to the green flag, and we are underway here. Green flag comes out, white flag comes out as well, and one more lap to go in this Big Green Egg 250.
DJ Cummings has a little bit of an advantage right now as Nick DeGroot tries to build momentum. He comes off of turn number 2 down the back straightaway. No help with him, but he gets a big run. Here comes Dylan Welch 3 wide as they race across the back straightaway.
DeGroot gets the edge, goes to the bottom of the racetrack, tries to hold on to the yellow line into turn 3. Welch trying to get some help. On the outside, Ron Capps and several others trying to shuffle forward. Seth Eggert now joins the fun. He gets a power move on the high side.
Eggert with the late run. He gets blocked by Dylan Welch and put into the fence. Here comes the 10 machine of DJ Cummings to the high line. We'll see if Ford Martin tries to go down low. He gets it to Nick DeGroot, and as they come across the line, we'll wait for timing and scoring. Ford Martin is shown as the winner of the Big Green Egg Indy 250. We'll see what race control has to say about that one, because I thought I saw Ford Martin duck underneath the yellow line ever so slightly, and with that kind of chaos, I think no question that race control would review it. But Nick DeGroot was there. Ford Martin got to him, got into him, got him set up into DJ Cummings, and cleared the path for a victory at Talladega in the Indy cars if it holds.
looking at the replay there, James, he didn't go, I don't think, below that yellow line and just barely nudges out Nick DeGroot.
It was tight. It was really, really close. We'll give you a few shots of the replay to see what happened here, but we see just how close it was with DeGroot and Cummings and company.
Yeah, you'll see right from that bottom line, Ford Martin has the run. And it's the question of, do you give or take in this scenario? Tries to push on Ford, and wow.
Wild, wild stuff. You see so much chaos, carnage, JP, here at the end. And I think especially it started with the block on Seth Eggert that Dylan Welch laid. And then you see the 10 machine of Cummings get a big run. But Ford Martin, with all that momentum on the backside, just gets into Nick DeGroot and forces his way through for victory at Talladega.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible, and what a finish to this one. But it's Talladega. You never know what's going to happen, and what a finish there. What a finish is all I can really say.
One of the wilder finishes, which is what you expect here. These are the unofficial results. We are waiting for race control to confirm. They are reviewing as it stands, and we will give you official word when it comes down. But Ford Martin unofficially crosses the line first ahead of Nick DeGroot. DJ Cummings, Dylan Welch, and Ron Capps round out the top 5. And I think what we can say pretty definitively is that DeGroot and Ron Capps advance into the round of 10. Great finishes when they needed them. Gabe Wood finishes 6th, 7th to Drew Walker, 8th, Seth Eggert, 9th to Garrett Miller, and CR22 Chad Reed completes the top 10.
What a drive for Stephen Wilson to get from the back of the field up to 11th position in the span of a couple laps. Robbie Lyons in 12th. Devin Henry recovers from a spin in the pits to 13th. Font finishes in 14th. Jason Keffer led some laps, finishing 15th. Stump finishes in 16th with Pardis, Massey, Kennan, and Davidson. Your top 20.
21st. On the rundown, Matt Stallneck and Will Rogers in 22nd. Brandon Brown finished in the 23rd spot. 24th went to Anthony Alfredo. It was the 4-car of Brett Baldeck who finished 25th. 26th to Kyle Busch in the 51. Covey Moore in the 15-car was 27th. Ryan Vargas for JD Motorsports with Gary Keller in the NASCAR Xfinity Series finishes 28th. Nick Sanchez 29th out of the playoffs at the end of the evening, and Garrett Smithley came home in 30th.
31st spot goes to Gary Sexton. A rough night for him. DNF in early. Jesse Vaughn also a rough night. 32nd overall. Rounds out the entrance tonight, James.
We are going to hold here on updates because race control is still reviewing the finish that Ford Martin and Nick DeGroot got together in, waiting to see if Ford gets hit with anything. Also hearing that DJ Cummings and DeGroot may end up with penalties of their own for separate infractions. So there are about 3 or 4 different things that race control is trying to sort through. What we can do, though, is bring up the live points and see how they stack up if the finish that we had at the line holds without any sort of movement whatsoever. And at the end of it all, it's Max Kennan and Gary Sexton who are going home if things hold. But again, Taylor Burris, that's an if at this moment. Still waiting to hear what the final ruling will be.
Certainly is a lot still at stake. As we know, there's a couple of penalties that may be issued out between Ford Martin, Nick DeGroot, DJ Cummings, and maybe even more. They're still yet to process what happened through this coming to the checkered flag. But as soon as race control gives us the full rundown of the situation, we will let all of you, the viewers, know.
We will stay on the air and wait for things to come through and see if we can figure out what's happening. But lots of work, I think, for race control to sort through, as there were about 4 or 5 different incidents. Justin Prince, if you are a Will Rogers or a Kyle Busch, somebody who was buried down there in 20th and just makes it through on the skin of their teeth, and Matt Stallneck as well, how excited are you to, I would say, pretty certainly be okay? Given that the incident happened ahead of them, any penalties, I think, would shuffle some of these drivers in the top 5 down, and it would push them up a little bit further. So they're certainly not going to score any less points, I think, than they had crossing the line.
Yeah, I am curious how this all plays out here, because it was interesting how this finish played out. DeGroot was in a great position to hold on, but again, you have to consider the give and take, and as well, this being the virtual world, some of the give and take can have some variations. It was an interesting finish indeed. I'm curious how this is all going to play out, as this can have some major ramifications.
To explain everything and to bring us the final verdict on the finish, we now welcome in race control, Game Sims himself, Josh Mendoza. Josh, you and Paul Sutton have reviewed what happened in the tower, and what has race control decided with regards to the finish of tonight's Big Green Egg Indy 250?
So we've determined that the run that Ford had, unfortunately, could have been avoidable contact, and we're going to give him a end-of-the-line penalty, sending him to the tail end of the lead lap. So he'll be the last car scored on the lead lap, as we're under caution. He would get an end-of-line penalty under regular circumstances. He couldn't have passed under the yellow line per our yellow line rule, so there was really nowhere he could have taken that, and he stayed on the throttle the entire time. So we've determined that to be avoidable contact, and that's going to go ahead and give the win to the next driver in line, which I believe is the 89.
No penalties for the 89 or the 10, just to confirm. We know that was being discussed, but the 07, the only one that receives a penalty at the end of this?
Yeah, correct. The 07 car is the reason why those two cars connected in the first place. So it's we're only looking at that initial contact. I mean, once you're out of control, you're out of control. So that's going to send Ford to the tail end, and that's going to bring the 89 to victory lane.
So that moves everybody up behind the 07, who then falls, based off of my quick math here, to 28th on the board and moves a few drivers up. But Josh Mendoza from Race Control, thanks for the explanation with regards to what happened at the finish.
Thank you, guys.
So there's Race Control's ruling, and that means that at the end of the all, Nick DeGroot does what Nick DeGroot does best and gets yet another victory in the IndyCars. On Monday Night Racing, he goes up the ladder even further. It is his 8th win in Monday Night Racing all time, the defending series champion. And all of a sudden, I wasn't sure if it was going to hold at the end just with the way the finish played out, but you come into this night, and even though it's not necessarily a race that's set up in your favor, because this is more strategy than skill with the Indy cars, what is it with this thing? Doesn't matter where we run them. Somehow, someway, you find your way to the front and get victories. And especially tonight, when you needed it, you step up in this moment and bring yourself into the next round of the playoffs, too.
Yes, sir. That was a crazy race. Expected it, though. You know, Talladega, Indy cars, it's a combination for chaos. But going in this race, I just wanted to protect those 3 quick repairs, bring them to the end. And it's crazy. We didn't even use any of our quick repairs here, but yeah, that finish, that's not how I want to win. And unfortunately, that's not the first time that's happened here. But we were just coming along, me and DJ having a drag race, and third place there just hit me with a guy 7 miles per hour faster in the rear tire with the nose of his car. So that's no good. And I'm sure he didn't want to win that way, and I don't want to win this way, you know, by technicality. But it's how it is. We got to win. And yeah, just crazy race, just still taking it all in.
There is, of course, the flip side of this, which is that without the contact, you probably do nose ahead of DJ Cummings by maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 1,000ths of a second. So I would say you probably were set for the victory just about no matter what happened there if you got turned around. So, but you put yourself in good places at the right times. And even though it doesn't seem like much, I feel like with the IndyCars in particular, that can mean a lot more, because we've seen how these races have gone in Monday Night Racing. And even that sometimes can be enough to get victories, to get points, to walk away on the positive side of things once the checkered flag falls.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these races this season, and because of the way it is with the wave rounds and all the quick repairs, you're not going to thin out the field. The whole field's going to be there at the very end, just like at the very beginning. So it's really about survival. You just got to make it to the end, put yourself in position. At the end there, we were up inside the top 10, and then we had the incident with Kyle. Then we had a couple guys get penalties there for one thing or another, and just found ourselves in a great position. I knew I just had to lay back, get a good run on DJ, and if I cleared him, I thought, all right, it's going to be me or him, first or second, and that's how it kind of played out. Not exactly, but it's how it played out.
It is indeed how it plays out. So I guess bad news for you is that your beloved Indy cars are done for the year. This is the last time we'll race them in season 2 on Monday Night Racing. But more importantly, you live to fight on into the next round of the playoffs. Dover and the Cup cars next week. What's your initial thoughts there?
Yeah, NASCAR's not my strongest thing, but I'm looking forward to trying it, and I'm hoping to end this season strong because this is actually going to be my last season in the Monday Night Racing League. So I'm hoping to defend the championship, go back-to-back, and end on top.
Back-to-back with the walk-offs. We'll see whether or not
Yes,
the man
sir.
from motorsports.com can stick with it. But Nick DeGroot, 8th win of his career in Monday Night Racing, extends his lead at the top of the all-time win list. Congratulations, Nick. You're the winner of the Big Green Egg Indy 250 at Talladega.
Thank you, guys, as always.
That is Syracuse, New York's Nick DeGroot, who comes away with the victory in Monday Night Racing, which means second on the board is our Bryant Shack Technologies in-race reporter. DJ Cummings gets to come up to the booth one more time for the podium interview. P2 tonight with Justin Prince.
And DJ, first things first, a crazy one-lap dash to decide this race. Talk us through that final lap as things played out very wildly.
Played out very wildly. They certainly did. I mean, I did exactly what I was going to tell you guys right before we went green. Stick to the yellow line and hope for the best. I was hoping Nick was just going to stall out there and we were just going to go side by side and drag race to the line, which we ultimately did until Mr. Ford Martin there took us all out, and I ended up landing on my roof down in turn 1 as we crossed the finish line. But Indy at Talladega, you know it's going to be a wild finish regardless, and it was a blast. I feel like I played it out about as perfectly as I could. Would I have liked to drag race Nick to the line? Yeah, of course. But obviously, when you got elimination races here and points are on the line, you want to be really smart with it at the same time. So, no, very, very, very happy with the P2 here. I'll take that any day of the week, racing with all these guys.
You talked a lot about the variations between Season 1 and Season 2 with this package, as well as some of the intensity levels here. With it being this tight of a situation, how difficult was it to try and think, okay, I've got to go on this run. When can I take it 3 wide? When's it smart to just ride? When can I back up to try and manage all those things throughout the night tonight?
It was really just playing it as you saw it ahead of you. So I knew when I knew going 3 wide normally wasn't the best call, because that lane was not substantial and it really didn't stick for very long. So I knew that the bottom lane, if you were about 5th or 6th in line, was going to check up pretty hard. So that was just going to end up causing a lot of trouble anyway, having to check up and then worry about the guy behind you trying to hit you at the same time. So I felt like my strategy of trying to run in the middle for the most part, I feel like I did that pretty well that last about 30 to 40 laps. They're just hanging out in the in that middle lane, and it worked out pretty nicely. Like I said earlier, I was hoping to aim to be about 3rd or 4th in line on that last restart, not the leader, because obviously the being out there by yourself as the leader, you're a sitting duck. So obviously that was the case, but obviously it was a lot of just trying to play it by, it was a lot of play it by ear. You can't really plan too far ahead because it's obviously so unpredictable, and you're not really sure how everybody's going to be racing.
Now the round of 10 starts off with the Cup cars at Dover, and what are your thoughts on going to the Monster Mile with the Cup cars to see how things fare out in the round of 10 to start?
Oh, I love it. I'm all about it. Dover was actually the first place I saw a NASCAR Cup Series event back in 2002, which shows you how old I am. But it was Cup cars at Dover always is going to be a blast, especially with that high downforce. High horsepower, low downforce package. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a handful, like Dover always is. And I think they've updated it where it's pretty spot on to what is very bumpy. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm very much looking forward. I always love running the Cup cars. Excuse me. But it's going to be a blast. I think we're setting ourselves up pretty good here for the round of 10. I think obviously for the first race in the round, you want to start off strong, so you're not backed up against the wall when it comes to the elimination race. So going to be aiming for a good finish, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you for the time, DJ.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. It was fun.
DJ Cummings coming home officially in second spot tonight. James, back over to you.
Another 2002 first race scene in person there. I guess I win by a month or two. I'll claim the Spring Martinsville race. Bobby Labonte won as my first. So not too separated in that part. And I guess maybe it shows you how old both DJ and I are. But we turn our attention now to the man who just makes it into the next round of the playoffs. It was close. It was tight. But Matt Stelnut, you're racing in the round of 10, and even though it was largely easy going, and I don't think it was too much of a worry for a good chunk of this race, right at the end when you had the flip and you had to go to the back of the field and it gets tight on points, were you aware of how close it was, and did that change the way you raced the final few laps?
No doubt. Absolutely. Definitely was aware of what was going on. Knew the entire race that if anybody had a problem there at the end, that there was at least one or two spots that were probably going to be up for debate on points. Knew also that we needed to stay ahead of Sanchez in case he won. So absolutely, I was watching the points as they ran there, and it was just a really unfortunate situation. We've had some thunderstorms here in the Charlotte area, and I think something may have been going on with our internet here tonight, and we just had a netcode issue right while we were battling for the win up there. So I was super disappointed that we couldn't take this eNASCAR Dallara up there and challenge for a win in those last few laps. But obviously attention immediately turned to the playoff scenario and doing whatever I was going to have to do to get back up there and get a couple spots. So we came back around after the pits. We had a 4.5 minute tow, and just kind of you're kind of seeing red at that point. Just hoping that a line will open up for you, and just taking the momentum wherever you can go, and got enough, and just thrilled that we were able to get through and get through the next round of the playoffs, and we'll get them next week. But yeah, it's craziness back there, man.
Officially P20, and now you get the opportunity to rest and recharge and focus on the Cup cars at Dover, which is a test in and of itself, especially with the high horsepower package this time around. Going to be a change from any of the former races we've seen at Dover Monday Night Racing. So now that you have to be mindful getting back on the throttle, we know how tricky Dover can be on corner exit. Is that the only challenge you expect there, or are there other ones that stand out to you as tests that you'll need to tackle well in order to start the next round on the right foot?
Yeah, I think I want to double check and see how many laps the race is. I think, like a lot of these races, it's going to be definitely a battle of survival. I think Dover is a super, super challenging racetrack, probably arguably maybe the most challenging oval that will run all season long. So I think the guys that really do their part to really get their cars dialed in throughout the week and qualify really well, to stay ahead of the wrecks, maintain track position, that's going to be a huge factor in order to kind of maintain your points cushion. So I think qualifying is just going to be absolutely critical, and whoever can hit a hot lap going into qualifying next week is going to put themselves in a really, really good spot. So I know, for me and my teammates, like DJ and Ford and those guys, we're going to be really zeroed in on qualifying. I feel really confident. Dover's a track that I'm really comfortable with, and a track that I've liked. I think the low downforce package that we're going to be using there is going to be really exciting to watch. I think it should lead to some great racing, and just got to make sure that get those hot laps dialed in qualifying, because the track position is going to be everything next week.
Tire potentially, I think, also up there too. But end of the day, those are all problems for next week. Tonight, you get to celebrate as one of the 10 drivers still alive in the Monday Night Racing playoffs for Season 2. Thanks for the time, Matt. Congratulations.
You got it, guys. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate it.
That's Matt Stolnick from NASCAR, who advances in as one of the 10 drivers who will be racing for the championship when we get back to it next Monday night. Justin Prince, and how much fun is this going to be? If you're anyone of Anthony Alfredo, Preston Pardis, Kyle Busch, DJ Cummings, Gabe Wood, Matt Stolnick, Ford Martin, even with the punt to the back of the line, he's still in good shape, as is Will Rogers, and then Ron Capps, Nick DeGroot also in there too. Gonna be a lot of fun to see these 10 drivers go at it.
I think so, because Dover's going to be a very fun track to see which drivers are able to balance the tires, I should rather say, and make sure they're able to save them for the long run. There's also some heavy hitters that I think are going to be up towards the front amongst those playoff drivers and battling back and forth potentially at that racetrack. I wouldn't be surprised to see drivers like Nick DeGroot especially be one of the drivers leading in the long run based on what I've seen from him on the sim. It's going to be an exciting race, to say the very least. It's going to be important, though, on making sure you keep your car out of the fence and be able to save that right front tire to make sure you're able to push on the long run.
It's tire wear, Taylor Burris, that I think is going to be part of the equation when we get to Dover next week. It's managing throttle on corner exit that is going to be the other piece of this. We saw it tonight. We saw how tricky it was to manage these Indy cars with the throttle. It's not all that much easier when you get to Dover, because with the way the banking works, it's very easy to get on the gas too quickly on corner exit and spin yourself out towards the inside wall.
And not only that, but Dover's a self-cleaning racetrack as well. You know, when you're upside the top side of the racetrack off corner exit and you loop it around, you're going to go right down to the bottom of the racetrack towards that inside wall, and you're possibly going to collect a good majority of the field if they're behind you. So you have to be careful if you're one of those drivers coming off the corner exit, seeing a car slide down. And for our playoffs drivers who are moving on to the next round, that's something they got to keep in mind. It's not 3 races, it's 2 races. So they have to be careful this race in order to at least find out where they need to be for the next race in a couple of weeks' time. So very critical to manage everything. Keep an eye on your surroundings. And I wouldn't be surprised. I noticed tonight we had a lot of actual spotters for these drivers here tonight. I would not be surprised if we saw a couple of more of these drivers who are in the playoffs ask one of their friends or someone who they trust to spot for them for the remainder of the season.
The intensity ramping up and the competition getting more serious as we work towards the conclusion of Season 2, which will be at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the trucks on March 22nd. The next round of the playoffs starts next Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on twitch.tv/Podium 2. We'll go to Dover International Speedway with the Cup cars, and then the week after, it's the trucks at Rockingham Speedway. So an old school feel. It's what we're going to see in the round of 10, but more action to tell you about before we get to that, including action from the MPI Cup Series next Sunday night, February 21st, 9:15 p.m. Eastern, round 7 of their season from Richmond Raceway. You'll see on the main Podium eSports Twitch channel. Then next Tuesday, February 23rd, it's the second round of the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway. You'll see that on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Then the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series a day later, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on twitch.tv/Podium 2 from USA International Speedway. And the next round of the MSRA Premier Series from Phoenix Raceway coming your way in a few weeks' time. Saturday, March 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern start time on twitch.tv/Podium 2, as well as Podium eSports YouTube and Facebook pages. Time to wrap up our broadcast to the Big Green Egg Indy 250 from Talladega Superspeedway in Talladega, Alabama. So many people to thank. Ford Martin, Paul Sutton, Josh Mendoza at Monday Night NASCAR, our team at Podium eSports, Cisco Scaramuza, Gary Sexton, John Theodore, tonight's producer, Ryan Bauer, and my partners in the broadcast booth, Taylor Burris and Justin Prince. I am James Pike, the voice of Podium eSports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring. We now send you over to the eRacer Twitch channel. We'll take a peek at testing for the Car Anomaly 500, which gets going Wednesday night. Thanks for tuning in. So long from Talladega.